Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Colorado Business Roundtable's annual Future of Work event. Come on in, we are getting started. I'm Janine Davidson. Hi, everybody. I'm president of Metropolitan State University of Denver, which you can actually see out the window, even though it's raining. And the Community College of Denver, president right here, Marie DeSantis, also my partner in crime on the Auraria campus. What's that? Is Ken here? Ken, are you here? Ken, the new chancellor of CU Denver. Wave your hand. Well, listen, it's an honor to speak to you today on behalf of Colorado Business Roundtable's Board of Directors and to join so many of the leaders here committed to shaping the future of Colorado's economy and our workforce. Today's theme, Looking Around Corners, could not be more timely. As global forces, from AI to demographic shifts, reshape how we live, how we learn, how we work, we must be agile, informed, and importantly, collaborative. Now, every year, this event brings together leaders across academia, business, community, and government, the ABCG model, to spark new ideas, form partnerships, and reimagine the future of work in our state and beyond. So a little bit about the Colorado Business Roundtable. Many of you are familiar, many of you are part of it, but we are the state affiliate of the National Business Roundtable, representing Colorado's leading employers. That would be you. Our partners include CEOs and top executives across all industries who believe that business is a force for good. We work together to find long-term strategic solutions to Colorado's most complex challenges, especially those affecting the workforce and the economy. Now at MSU Denver, we are on the front lines of this work. As Colorado's third largest public university, we proudly serve about 17,000 diverse, driven students, many of whom are the first in their families to go to college. Our mission is to hold the line on the American dream through access, affordability, career-connected learning. And so we work hand in hand with employers to build that talent pipeline. We have something called the Classroom to Career Hub, which helps solve industry's challenges and to ensure that our students graduate and are ready to lead and ready to work. So here's a look ahead for today. What's ahead for today? The Colorado Business Roundtable will unveil key insights from its executive workforce survey, capturing how top employers are navigating change. We'll explore national workforce trends with data experts from Burning Glass Institute and the Human Potential Summit. A powerhouse panel of C-suite leaders from Fidelity, Amazon, Jacobs, and the Denver International Airport will share how they are adapting hiring, retention, and workplace culture. And we'll dive into the transformational impact of AI on work with our leading voice from Accenture. And we'll cap it off with a conversation on the national workforce policy with U.S. Secretary of Labor, Lori Chavez de Remer. Now, I encourage you all to stay for the full program and for the informal connections that happen during this afternoon's reception. That's often where, the real magic happens. So now, let's get started. Please join me in welcoming the president of the Colorado Business Roundtable, our fearless leader, Debbie Brown.
Speaking of fearless leaders, Janine Davidson is definitely that. She really was transformative when I got to see at MSU Denver commencement a few years ago, and she knew that was a hook. To see lives changed through all the different university systems and workforce systems that we represent is really powerful. So thank you, Janine, for kicking us off. This year's theme is really a private sector focus. We've had a lot of different themes over the years. I think this is our 5th or 6th year doing a future of work convening like we are today. But it's really pivotal to make sure we understand what's happening in the private sector, how the private sector is leading in so many incredible ways. Because we couldn't bring all the private sector voices to the table today, we decided to do a survey in advance of today's convenings. We surveyed about 18 major Colorado employers to explore Colorado workforce trends and challenges, representing sectors like healthcare, tech, energy, finance. Respondents shared real-time insights on talent strategy and planning. So rather than forecasting outcomes, the survey aimed to identify themes to guide policy, workforce development, and strategic planning. So this report is available for the first time today, and we have several copies on each table for you to take a look at. And then we're going to delve into some of the insights to sort of set the stage for today's conversation. I know particularly people who like data points, you're going to hear a little bit of that from me today and then from our next two speakers as well to frame the conversation. A few quotes to note from the executives that we surveyed. The technical skills are important, but we need workers who can connect the dots, communicate, share milestones, and collaborate across teams. Younger generations are having trouble integrating into the business environment. They need communication, collaboration, and general business acumen to contribute effectively in the new environment. Education opens doors, but people skills make or break the hire. Kind of looking, if I see a few nodding heads, those are interesting insights. These employers are not passively responding to change, they are driving it. In the face of persistent labor shortages, rising costs, and rapidly changing skill requirements, employers are taking proactive steps to remain competitive. They are evolving hiring practices. We're going to hear about some of that today. Adoption of skills-based hiring, for example, accelerating the adoption of technologies like generative AI and automation, and building new partnerships with K-12 systems, traditional higher ed systems, and post-secondary workforce organizations that prioritize speed, ROI, relevance, and scale. The key insights from the survey and executive interviews add important nuance to trends shaping the world of work. And our theme is really around looking around corners, and it was trying to get a sense of how private sector folks are looking around these corners to better align with employers and unlock the full potential of the individual. So a couple quick takeaways for you to consider that we pulled from the report. Large employers are hiring for agility, not just ability. The shift to skills-based hiring is coming, but the skills in demand aren't just technical. Colorado's top employers are prioritizing critical thinking, communication, and adaptability. In an AI-powered economy, human skills are the new competitive edge. If you're not hiring for learning potential and resilience, you're already falling behind. I want to thank the executives. We've already thanked them a little bit from some of the companies that are here today to talk, Amazon, Fidelity, Jacobs, and Denver International Airport, that are going to be delving into their particular insights on these issues. The other key takeaway is workforce partnerships must deliver and fill evolving needs. Colorado has earned a national reputation for its collaborative and forward-thinking approach to workforce innovation. By remaining agile, data-driven, and closely aligned with employer needs, we can continue to lead the way. Many of you in the room here are driving that progress. We've talked a little bit about the private sector, but many of you in the room are part of that workforce transformation. From the Colorado Workforce Development Council, over here, the Colorado Office of Future of Work, our workforce centers, want to give a shout out to them, nonprofits, community college systems, traditional higher ed institutions that Janine is representing today, and impactful training programs like Cross Purpose and Activate Work that are also here today that do really amazing work in this system. To justify workforce partnerships, training pipelines should adhere to a simple framework according to our folks that we surveyed. Demonstrate measurable ROI, align the future needs, move at the speed of business, and scale to fill talent gaps. And the final insight I want to share, and again, this is sort of an executive summary of the full report, is AI won't replace your workforce, but it will redefine it. And we're going to hear today from Eyal with Accenture to talk about the transformative effect of AI and what it'll do for employers of all kinds, how individuals will be impacted, and what you need to know today to move forward with that critical knowledge. While most large employers that we surveyed don't foresee major job losses due to AI, they do anticipate sweeping changes in roles, workflows, and required skills. Companies investing now in process redesign, reskilling, and human tech integration will lead in the next era of productivity and will retain the power to do it. It's exciting. I think AI is on everybody's mind. And I would guess, I'd just love to show of hands, how many of you use AI at least daily? All right, Al, I did some of your homework for you on like getting to know the crowd. I do as well. Colorado has earned a national reputation, and it's exciting to see such a full room. Janine mentioned Colorado Business Roundtable represents academia, business, community, and government. And we think that's a really interesting secret sauce for how we're able to collaborate and move the needle forward on issues as important as workforce. The results of our survey work that we've done and all the conversations we've had with our private employers are really a call to action to align faster, build smarter partnerships, and strengthen the skills and systems needed for continued long-term competitiveness. I want to give a special thanks to Chris Brown and Lori Frazier, who are in the room today, who helped with these executive interviews and putting together the data for the booklet that you have at your table. If you would like the full briefing of the report, you're invited to attend a Zoom meeting this Friday. We have a QR code, I think, on the screen potentially for that if you want to attend, or we'll send an email out to folks to attend, and we'll be videotaping it as well. They will be going point by point through the survey, be able to ask any questions that you choose. Today's conversation is all about what's next, what's around the corner, and we'll hear from some of these exceptional leaders in a minute. The highlight of the day, I hope you're all able to stay. We're actually going to hear from the U.S. Secretary of Labor, Lori Chavez de Reamer, to finish up the program, which will be really exciting. This is a chance to learn from one another, reduce barriers, and collaborate on building smarter, faster talent pathways. And now I'm excited to transition to our next segment, which will focus on workforce intelligence, the data to inform an accelerating talent landscape. And this is a little more of the framing and the data for today's conversation. We're joined by two incredible thought leaders. Debbie Wasden is the Senior Vice President of the Burning Glass Institute, where she leads strategy and solutions to improve mobility and equity through skills. She brings over 15 years of experience aligning talent needs and education and workforce systems. She's going to be joined for the conversation with Taylor McLemore, who is the COO of Tilt and founder of the Human Potential Summit. He is a venture builder and former managing director of the Techstars Workforce Development Accelerator with deep experience at the intersection of innovation and work. So please join me in welcoming Debbie and Taylor to the stage.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Excited to be here. Well, why don't we start with, Debbie gave us a good introduction, but anything that you want to add for yourself and Burning Glass Institute?
I like to refer myself as DC Debbie in joke with that. So I'm Debbie Wasden. I'm a senior vice president at the Burning Glass Institute. I've really spent my career focused at the intersection of business, education, and the economy. And as I find myself at the Burning Glass Institute, really focused on how we can deploy and actualize data and insights to really build a more aligned and systematic skills-based economy. BGI was founded in late 2021. We're a fully independent non-for-profit, and I refer to us as a data laboratory, where we're really experimenting and looking at the insights at the intersection of the future of work and the future of learning. We scale our impact by creating metrics, benchmarks, and data sets that leverage advanced analytics and innovative models to empower organizations with the insights to drive change and optimize talent strategies. But really what we're doing is we're taking data and we're making it actionable. And my job at BGI is to not have us have reports that sit on shelves, but really make data and insights come to life so that you all can use it with your stakeholders in building better systems, infrastructure, and supporting your local stakeholders to be able to access opportunity.
It's wonderful. BGI does really impressive work. So I'm excited that we're going to get to dive into it. And to build on my background, Debbie, Denver Debbie, not DC Debbie, did a great job on the intro. But to provide a little bit more visibility of the company I'm with, it's called Tilt. It's a leave management company. So we are very much in the HR tech space, and we're actively figuring out these questions of how does AI change work. So I speak to that from an employer and practitioner perspective. And then also the Human Potential Summit, which is a convening that we launched last year for the first time here in Denver to bring together business leaders and education innovators. So to frame the conversation of workforce intelligence, I really want to start from the idea of velocity. How quickly is change occurring? Because I think it's easy to take snapshots of what is happening in the workforce, but it's much more valuable for business leaders, for education, institutional leaders, for government to say, but what's the directionality of this? And so we're going to chat a little bit about this AI world that we live in. Not that it's all about AI, but I think it's the most important vector of change that's occurring so that we can think about the framing. So let me see if I've got slides working here. That's great. So the first thing that I want to talk about is that we live in a world that I think is deeply defined by systems of stasis more than dynamism, which is really hard considering the moment that we live in where so much is changing quickly. Whether that's the regulatory environments that we've inherited as business leaders for what we have to comply with and good practices around people, to even our internal policies. You know, hey, we do performance reviews once a year. And why? Well, it's how we've done it for a long time, or it's the most that we think we can invest. There's a lot of these things that in some cases are good, and in some cases I think we're quickly going to find are vestigial structures of the past. And the thought experiment that I like to engage in, both for the company that I help lead, but for anyone else that leads an organization, business or otherwise, is a question, how many of your people are in the right seats? And think about that honestly. Is it 100%? I would guess that anyone who has the experience of leading an organization is, you know, it's not 100. Now, is it 50? Is it 75? Is it 80? And my next question is, after you try to guess what your number is, how many levers do you feel like you have so that you could get the right people into the right seats with a belief in people's potential if they're in the right place with the right environment? And the reason I start there is that I don't think this conversation about AI needs to be just buzz and sort of technical talk. But that's why I have an AI-generated image of Sputnik above me. I would propose to you that this is absolutely a Sputnik moment. And I don't know if it feels that way to you and your organization, but I believe that it is. And it's not for most of what is getting discussed right now around chatbots or a ChatGPT version of this. Those are very powerful and meaningful. But it's that I really want to sort of express this idea of the difference between this generative AI generation that we're seeing right now and the next one that's coming, which I'll describe as one that's agent-based, or you might hear it referred to as agentic, which dangerous. There's probably someone out there with their AI bingo card for today and they just got all the way across. But let me explain what that means, because I do think that it can be very instructional for us as business leaders. So traditional AI is very task-based. It's, hey, this part of this role, can AI do that for me? And that's powerful. That's happening right now. But agentic AI is around the corner, if not arguably here, and it's very different. So if our original model is more around the idea of like, hey, I've got this idea of tasks and a human can do it. Oh, it turned off? Okay. We'll just keep going. It would be the equivalent of being like, I have an intern. Here we go. And now I'm going to have AI do some of those things. The difference with agentic AI is that you move to a totally different sort of structure of workforce, where AI can make independent decisions, can do multiple tasks, figure out new sequences for work. And I think it absolutely upends the traditional structure of an organization. Because what it's going to do for us is challenge us to think about, how does my sales organization work now that there is a set of nearly equivalent workers that are going 24/7, figuring out new answers? What about my product team? How they integrate ideas from the market into their work? And so I think for business leaders, education leaders, it's really going to shift to being a productivity multiplier, which is good. And for those that embrace it, it'll be a strategic edge. And for some, they might say, that sounds really dangerous. I need my people to run my organization. But this is my challenge for you. This is happening. Your competitors are doing this. And so the question is, what are you going to do about that? And I think that is a choice between this agentic future being something that occurs to you in your organization versus how you make it part of your organization's future. So what I think you can get into from like a tangible perspective that's not just AI buzzwords, but is really much more about how is this going to change the next year to 3 years, is thinking about it from organizational structure. I think it'll absolutely flatten organizations as work is done differently and more rapidly. It'll be more project-based and cross-functional. The other thing is that we're going to need to redistribute talent. There will be emerging roles, things like your chief AI officer, I think will become a norm, not a sort of novel concept. AI workflow architects, trust and safety and governance leads. These are going to become core parts to how you do your work. I think that it'll lead to culture changes, and hopefully some that are really positive. It'll be less about command and control and much more about enablement. And it'll be about efficiency, adaptability, and outcomes. So the best way that I can sort of bring this down to the ground level is that if I asked you, how fast could you do a reorg in your company, organization? My guess is the answer would be months at the fastest. I think we should all be prepared that the future that we're going to be competing in, performing in, delivering value against, reorganization is going to be weeks, if not days. New initiatives aren't going to take a week to months to launch. They might take a day or hours. That might not be next month, but I think it's very much in our 24 to 36 month horizon. And so as we think about how those shifts occur, I think it's critical that we ground ourselves on some principles. This is not about getting rid of humans. In fact, I'm going to borrow a line from my friend Beth Rudden. It's about actually taking the robot out of the human work. That's the opportunity. And it's how do we really build it around humans as the why, and AI and sort of our new technological abilities as the how. But where I want to take us for the rest of this conversation to lean into the amazing research that Debbie and her team at the Burning Glass Institute are doing is to think about what does that mean for us? If it's a higher velocity, more dynamic future, how do we have tactical opportunities based in data and the people that we continue to believe in so that we can succeed? So I think it's a moment where we can choose between this velocity leading to more transactional relationships, where we're saying, oh, well, move to all contractors, or I'm not going to be able to rely on my people as much. I think it's actually the opportunity is to do the opposite. It's to lean into the mutual benefit that sits between the employer and employee. And so that's what we really need to think about, is how do we do that? And believe in the potential that each person in our companies can bring to us. So with that, I want to jump into some questions that your all's research really speaks to, Debbie. So the first with that framing is that we have a more dynamic future in front of us for businesses, education, et cetera, but especially for businesses and organizations, what are the areas that companies can focus on and ensure that they keep up and even lead in this moment?
Thanks, Taylor. As we reflect on Taylor's thoughtful introduction and overview, and we almost think about it as, I think that was a pretty glass half full perspective. We really need to, and we're thinking about the speed of the evolving economy and building a dynamic workforce. We really need to imagine the world utilizing data and insights to drive key workforce success. Imagine being able to bring shared focus and urgency and purpose for workforce in our city and our region, and to have that aspiration benchmarked and to actually be able to track what success actually means and looks like over time, so that these big, audacious goals aren't just aspiration, but they actually become reality. Three themes that as we go throughout the rest of our discussion, I hope we touch on and you think about throughout the conversation. First and foremost, talent comes from within. Most of the communities and employers and firms already have the talent they need, but lack the skills-based insights to identify and cultivate and support that talent as it moves up. Lack of awareness of the skills to identify hidden workers and to be able to support what future workforce needs look like are going to become really imperative as we build sort of more efficient skills-based bridges. The second is around outcomes over inputs. This is really important. There's a big variance in long-term outcomes, even among jobs and credentials that appear similar on the surface. Providing students and workers with greater visibility. And this is not just telling folks what we think a good job means or what we think their career path should look like. This is about empowering workers to make their own informed decisions based on outcomes that they can access. And the third is, as I say, sunlight alone is insufficient. I'll talk about this a few times today, but while our research at BGI and others can shed light on the importance of problems, on important problems and stakeholders, it's really you all. And I call that air game and ground game. So there's an air game and a movement that can give aggregated insights, but it's really the community in this room and the communities on the ground that are the ones who need to be empowered to actually take that into action and coordinate. That tracking over time and over the life of on the ground is really what's going to allow for the seamless movement in aggregate, and as we see these big trends in AI become really actualized in the city of Denver and across Colorado.
Absolutely. And can you maybe, we're going to shift to the landscape for workforce. What's the status of economic mobility and pathways? Because I think we've talked a fair amount from sort of the organization and employer perspective, but let's embrace the worker. What's going on there?
Sure, and if we could advance the slide. Sure. This is a slide we start with, and I think it's a profound one. You may not, it's large enough. Economic mobility in America is in decline. There's a stark reality in there. In 1940, 90% of Americans age 30 were earning more than their parents at the same age, and a figure that declined to 50% by 1980. And yet there's huge pockets of mobility. We had a big project with the Business Roundtable, the national organization, where we looked at and studied the Fortune 500 firms. And what we saw when we looked at the BRT companies was that these large firms were actually lifting millions, 1.4 million to be exact, US workers into the middle class each year. These firms remain engines of mobility, and the numbers tell a really important story where it needs to be unpacked as to why. What are the drivers for where some firms are leading to mobility and are leading to hedging what that stat looks like in decline so that we can change the curve? What good looks like and why? And how can we measure and allow for measurement to shine a spotlight so that we have benchmarks to know how to compare and also how to proceed and get better?
That's great, and it reminds me of one thing that almost every organization says, which is that our people are our greatest asset. And it's, to your point, critical to say, well, what are we doing to enable and unlock the potential of that? So how do we think about leading companies that are building high potential environments for workforces and practices that are leading to a positive impact from that for company outcomes? Like, what are some of the patterns? What should the people in this room know about?
And if we advance the slide, this is really one of the driving forces that brought me to the Burning Glass Institute. We developed a corporate scorecard that we call the American Opportunity Index. It was in collaboration with the Schultz Family Foundation and the Harvard Business School project on managing the future of work. And what it showed was where you work matters. If you think about your own workforce engagement, and we focus so much on jobs and occupations, how often have you been able to compare firms? What we did in this effort is we actually looked at the roles that people are working within. We have a data set of 75 million workers the career histories of those individuals, and we can extract what actually happens to them over time. So what we're able to do is compare these workers in an apples to apples comparison, and what we found is actually the firm for which they're working in matters, and that corporate practice matters very much. To give you some specific stats as you're looking up there, top firms in top quartiles are 2.5 times more likely to promote their workers than bottom quartile firms. These are in apples to apples jobs. Same roles, same years of experience, different firm. They are 1.7 times more likely to retain workers over a 3-year time period. Workers make 68% more. That's a pretty significant amount. And they're 3 times more likely to hire workers without a degree and employ skills-based practices. Case in point, a customer service representative at a name brand airline. Customer service reps at that airline were 4 times more likely to be promoted than a comparable insurance company. So a customer service rep at that airline, 4 times more likely to be promoted than if they were a customer service rep at a comparable insurance company that we looked at. They were earning $47,000 at that national airline, where the median salary for the customer service rep at an industrial supply company was $83,000 and $37,000 at that insurance company. Those are big differences. That airline, 9 out of 10 customers retained after 3 years versus 67% at the industrial supply company and 42% at the insurance firm. What we found is that there are levers, right? We think about wage as the lever that you need to push on, wage to be able to access good talent and support them. But what we found is actually you have different levers at your disposal. Yes, wage is important, but so is promotion. So is the ability to access skills and get a better job when you leave. So is the ability to access a job with lower experience or without a bachelor's degree. So all of these things really mattered. And one last point on this is that BGI can look at the outcomes of this work. We can see what actually happened to the workforce, and then we can guess at why. So we don't know why unless we go in and talk to your firms, unless community organizations or groups like Cobert are working and talking with firms and saying, I can see what's happening. Why do you think that's happening? Why do you think you have lower mobility rates in this space versus higher retention rates in these different roles? So this is all really, it was not a name and shame activity. This was an air game activity designed to show that you can measure, and what measures can be benchmarked, and it can lead to a little bit of competitive spirit, but it also can lead to hopefully being able to have some intentionality about the practices that are driving your internal systems and workforce.
One of the things that really stood out to me from spending some time with you all and then also just learning more from the American Opportunity Index is that industry also isn't destiny, right? That one of my favorite pieces from that is that you can compare things such as retailers, which is a very common entry-level job. And it's not that, hey, retail has to be low economic mobility, low compensation. The index actually shows that different retailers had different practices generating different outcomes. That was a choice. Like these things that sometimes feel like the market imposing themselves on us are not always it's not always that, and they're the levers that you described, correct?
Exactly. And people don't know how to make an informed decision. And so they don't know what roles and jobs lead to better outcomes. They also don't know what employers lead to different outcomes. And people have different motivations. And you'll hear this around our occupational analysis as well. There's a key theme in this, which is helping people to make the decision that's right for them. So this was not about pointing out that there's a better firm or a worse firm. This is about pointing out that some firms are going to lead to different outcomes. One may lead to higher mobility rates and faster promotions. One may lead to higher wages that are sustained over time. Maybe you're looking for a more stable job. Maybe you're looking to grow your career really quickly.
Absolutely. So one thing we've touched on, but I'd love to go deeper on, is this idea of a skills-first mentality. We have a lot of long-standing labor practices, the good old resume, what schools you went to. There's a lot of talk about this skills first. So what does that look like as firms say, how does that apply to me? What do I do? Let's dive into that.
Perfect. And
Next one.
yeah, perfect. So we're gonna go through a couple of slides, but this is a really important slide for us. So what we were able to actually unpack in our research is that skills-based mobility, and I'm very intentional in that language, is win-win. When workers without a bachelor's degree land a role based on skills, when a company dropped that requirement, their average salary goes up by $12,400 annually. When a firm hires that individual, they see an 8% gain in higher retention rates. We know it works and we know it's win-win, and yet when we looked at what happened post companies making big promises to move to skills-based practices, what we saw was that the majority of companies lack the infrastructure to actually make good on those promises. So what we saw was a flurry of activity to remove or reduce job descriptions that required the BA and focused on the access of that job. And we found that what actually took place is that a third of companies were able to actually hire more people based on their skills. A third of companies had good intent, but basically remained at the same place in their hiring practices. And a third of companies actually hired significantly more people with bachelor's degrees for the same roles after they had removed the degree requirement. What we actually saw in real practice, and this is a sort of big number, is that for every 100 jobs after the degree requirement was removed, only 4 people got a job that wouldn't otherwise have gotten it without a bachelor's degree. 1 in 700 roles is being filled by somebody without a BA who otherwise would have had that barrier in front of them. It means that there's a lot of work to be done, and we ask ourselves why. Is it because we just made promises and weren't fulfilling them? That's not what we think. We think that there's actually quite a few barriers within the companies that are making it difficult and risky to make good on these actions. One of the big things that we wanted to look at was, how do you de-risk that? Rather than just focusing on access, so hiring individuals without a bachelor's degree as your definition of skills-based, we wanted you to focus on mobility. You already have talent within your firm. You already know that they're successful. How can you start by promoting and supporting those who don't have a BA or those who you're hiring and promoting based on their skills when you already have the trust because they're inside their firm? We really think about that as de-risking these kind of efforts. We did a big look in a partnership with the Koch Foundation and Stand Together that focused on what we called the Skillability Index. Again, we looked at the lived experiences of millions and millions of workers and the firms they went into, and rather than asking the company, are you doing skills-based practices, we actually just looked at what happened. Did they remove the degree requirement? Did they hire people without degrees? Did they have alignment for roles where they were hiring non-traditional majors and minors? Did they promote folks over time without that degree, and how did that get sustained? And it's actually really interesting. There's a lot of companies who are doing it without even knowing they're doing it because they haven't looked retrospectively at it to see what actually is happening. And so again, that theme that I mentioned is, how do you connect what's actually happening at your firms or on the ground over time with the intentionality of the priorities and practices that you're trying to lead? If you go one slide forward, I just wanted to bring up 2 things really quickly in this because I know time is short. The first is that we talked about firms. The second is that there's occupations involved. We built out a framework called Jobs That Mobilize. That really was a prioritization mechanism to look at what are the jobs that are good for a community, pay living wages, and are good for workers and are in demand, are stable in the face of things like AI and otherwise, to allow for us to be able to have a methodology for identifying where there could be pockets of skill to skill and non-traditional pathways. This idea of understanding what are the skills, aligning on those skills based with human employer interaction, getting consensus, and then identifying where could you help and support transitions with kind of what we call skill adjacencies. How do you help somebody who you might not otherwise have identified move from job to jobs where you wouldn't have otherwise seen them? This led to what we've just launched called the Skills First Workforce Initiative. We did this with 11 large BRT companies representing a cross-sector approach, where we identified 11 roles that were common across all of the companies. We took a guess at what those the skills were inside those taxonomies using job posting analysis and common methodologies. Two really quick takeaways, and I'll hand it back to Taylor, was that we were universally wrong. So we did the analysis, we put it in front of the companies, and we said, what do you think? And they said that laundry list of 50 skills that you just gave me is not helpful. We need proficiency levels, and the definitions that you gave are not quite right. And then in complete consensus, they all agreed on how to fix it. So what was being signaled through the job postings was wrong, and they all agreed on what they needed. It was profound. Within 24 hours, we came to consensus across these companies on what they believed were the core skills that defined these different roles. Why that matters is because once you can have common skill languages across your different companies, you can think about job-to-job transitions differently. You can think about trusting each other differently. When somebody says, I have an employee coming from a customer service representative from my company, would you take that as they're moving into a new role? Well, maybe if you're not in the right industry, you might not have otherwise done that. But if you have the same definitions of the role, then all of a sudden it becomes kind of like proxy proficiency and trust across the different regions. So my key takeaways as I hand it back to Taylor is that common language matters. Understanding what is happening within companies matter. What happens and the outcomes of the different roles matter. And then how can you make all of these different insights both actionable for your own use, but also how do you put that in the hands of decision makers within your companies, but also job seekers, learners, as they're trying to navigate where they're headed.
And I want to double down on this being a really powerful tool. In taking over as Chief Operating Officer at Tilt, I became responsible for supporting a large customer service organization, and we had no inventory of our internal teams and skills, and I used this as our starting place, and it gave us an amazing jump to do it. So I highly recommend that organizations look at this. To make sure that we keep agenda on schedule here, I think the headline for me is, these skills-based practices are about equity, they're about access, they're about opportunity. They're also about company agility and dynamism that has always been needed, but is only going to be needed more and more as we go into this future. So Debbie, any final thoughts from you?
My last final thought in bringing it back to the opening around AI, we hear the same terms, augmentation, automation. I think we all need to look at sort of what are the new AI power skills. What is it at that intersection of those two that are going to power the economy? And how can we approach these changes and the dynamism of the economy from a new lens? So how do we use that data to embrace what is coming? And then how do we support the evolution of the economy, but also of your workforce on the ground?
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Well, thank you so much to Debbie and Taylor for that insightful look into how workforce data is shaping the way we think about skills and talent pipelines and our future-ready strategies. Let's give them a round of applause. You know, this presentation really reminds us just how important it is to align the education, the policy, and the business in this fast-moving space that we're in right now. Now, before we hear from today's C-suite panel, we would like to take a moment to recognize one of our valued sponsors. So please join me in welcoming Jack Tate, representing the Associated Builders and Contractors, for a few sponsor remarks and to introduce the panel. Come on up.
Appreciate it. All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jack Tate. I'm CEO of Associated Builders and Contractors. That's your friendly neighborhood construction trade association dedicated to helping our contractor members develop people, win work, and deliver that work ethically, safely, and profitably for the communities in which we work. Before leading ABC Rocky Mountain, several of you know that I served in the Colorado House of Representatives and the State Senate, where I consistently advocated, at least I hope I did, consistently advocated for policies that helped businesses, supported business development, and also created open pathways for workers to succeed. That perspective shapes our approach to workforce development today, making sure opportunity is accessible, training is high quality, and outcomes serve both employers and workers. Nationally and regionally, we're deeply engaged in building the talent pipeline, not just by training the next generation of skilled workers, but by partnering with schools, employers, and community leaders like yourselves to show students and career changers that construction offers real upwardly mobile careers. Now, this isn't just about filling jobs. It's about helping people build lasting careers and futures in an industry that drives Colorado's economy. We believe the key to that is fair and open competition, where people succeed based on ability and performance and effort, not barriers or political influence. We're proud to be a part of the solution here today and excited to work with everyone here to strengthen Colorado's workforce from the ground up. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to say some remarks about ABC. Now I'd like to introduce Dr. Mordecai Brownlee to kick off our next panel. As president of the Community College of Aurora, Dr. Brownlee is a nationally recognized leader in workforce development and economic mobility, championing innovative strategies to expand access and opportunity. Most recently, he was named Man of the Year by the Aurora Chamber of Commerce. His thought leadership and passion for transforming lives makes him the perfect guide for this future-focused conversation. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Brownlee to the stage.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Oh my goodness, good afternoon, everyone. All right, it's an absolute honor to be here with you all on today. Let's set the stage for what today's conversation will center on. The future of work is unfolding fast. AI, demographic shifts, and economic pressures are reshaping how we train and lead and hire. Today is about looking around the corners and staying ahead. Throughout the Colorado Community College system, we are committed to preparing a future-ready learners workforce, students who are not only academically excellent, but agile and industry connected and equipped for the demands of tomorrow's economy. That commitment is why being on this conversation today and being a part of it is what deeply matters to myself. My personal passion for this work stems from a core belief that the collaboration between business and industry and education is not just important, it is essential. It's the engine that drives workforce innovation, economic mobility, and the opportunity for every Coloradan. Workforce strategy is a business imperative, and companies aren't just responding to change, they're driving it, building talent pipelines, and shaping policy. Today's panel will bring global employers to share how they're transforming workforce strategies and staying ahead for this ever-changing future. At this time, I'm going to introduce our panelists and also read their bios as they come. Our first panelist I would like to introduce is Amanda Willard. She is the Global Workforce Development Strategist for Amazon. Come on up, Amanda. Can we give her a hand as she's coming? Amanda Willard is a seasoned HR leader known for pioneering innovative talent strategies at major companies like Amazon, JP Morgan Chase, and T-Mobile. At Amazon, she focuses on a future-ready workforce solutions, skills mapping, and career pathways for global technical teams. Thank you so much for being with us. Next, we have Maria G. Melendez. She's the Chief of Staff for the Denver International Airport. Maria oversees strategy, policy, equity initiatives at the sixth busiest airport in the world. A former executive of LA Metro, she's a champion for inclusive workforce investment and helped launch the Seed LA, a workforce-focused college prep boarding school. Thank you so much for being with us. Next, we have Kirsten Kirkendall, Head of Talent, Fidelity Investments. Kirsten leads talent acquisition, learning, and development at Fidelity, where she's building a culture of internal mobility and personalized growth strategy. With nearly 2 decades at the company, she brings a deep understanding of enterprise transformation. Thank you for being with us. Last but certainly not least, Jeannie Work. Jeannie Work is our Vice President of Jacobs. Let's give her a hand as she's coming. Jeannie is a licensed professional engineer and operational leader overseeing water infrastructure teams across 10 states at Jacobs. She brings expertise in engineering workforce trends, hybrid leadership, and mentoring in mission-critical sectors like water and transportation. Thank you so much for being with us, Jeannie. And I believe I'm supposed to sit down. So let's see if I can do that. All right. All right, let's have a good time, all right? Thank you all so much for your expertise, and thank you so much for being a part of today's program. This one is just a toss-up to see what resonates with anyone who wants to jump in here first. And the first question is what one trend or disruption, whether technological, economic, or cultural, that's having an impact on how your organization is planning for the future of work? Part B of that is, and how are you meeting that challenge? It's open to anyone.
Oh, sure. So I will take the low-hanging fruit and definitely will jump on the bandwagon with advanced technologies. It's really impacting and reshaping the future of work at Amazon. So some specific ways that we are seeing that work is, as was highlighted in the prior session, is really taking a look at our workforce systems, at the work that our individuals are doing, and asking ourselves, where should technology work to resolve and move that work to where it's human work versus technology work. So a couple of the key workforce systems that we're putting in place is using technology to help us better understand what the current and emerging skills will be needed for our workforce. Then taking that information and working backwards to develop skills matrix and learning and development to help upskill and reskill our workforce to support those emerging pieces. And then in addition, working very closely with our workforce to help them feel empowered when it comes to additional and advanced technologies, so that they are at the forefront versus something being done to them. They're helping to cultivate and support their long-term career aspirations.
Well stated, Amanda. I'll read this again. What's one trend or disruption, whether technological, economic, or cultural, that's having an impact on your organization, is planning for the future of work, and how are you meeting that challenge?
Yeah, so for us at Denver International Airport, we take more of a global lens to this, and that is really changing demographics and economics globally. We're actually seeing a growing middle class in Latin America, Asia, and Africa. And so we're looking at how are those changes affecting us here locally. And you have people that are affording luxuries for the very first time, like international travel. And so how we connect that back home is we at DEN have adapted what we call a megatrends mindset. And what that really encompasses is really how are we looking at these trends and how are we bringing our workforce along with us? And just yesterday, we convened a megatrend symposium, much like today, a diverse group of stakeholders having these discussions so that we are bringing not just our workforce, but the community with us and having real conversations within our workforce development programs, our internships, our leadership development programs, and really it's become part of our everyday conversations, even in the executive level, so that we're constantly really embedding that future of work and those discussions into our everyday operations.
Outstanding.
I would just add, it's very interesting at this point that we have 5 different generations in the workforce, and trying to meet the unique needs and preferences of each of those is a challenge I'm sure every single one of us is thinking about. At Fidelity, we're continually looking at and speaking with our employees, or we call associates, to try to understand the benefits and the different on-site perks that could help them. 77,000 employees worldwide hopefully live their best life at work as well as at home. That active listening is very important, not only from an enterprise lens, but a regional lens, a business unit lens, and we do so in a myriad of ways. We do formal pulse check-ins, we do targeted surveys, we do informal and formal listening posts, and all of those things help us lean into understanding what our employees' needs are. A couple examples I would just share quickly. It's led to some great enhancements on site through working with our real estate organization, who have been able to deploy quiet rooms and adjustable workspaces to help our employees be more productive, but also support some movement both in the office and outside of the office. A couple of our regions are really excited about a pickleball court that they've been able to deploy, and even complementary yoga. But even more seriously, we partner a lot with our working parents and the needs that they have in today's workforce and at home, which has led us to enhance some benefits in support of them. Things like expert elder care, child care coordinators, and a virtual network of professionals to support both their mental and emotional health, not only for themselves, but also for their families.
Don't let me go last.
Come on now.
Okay, all
You got
right. All of those resonate with the experience that we're seeing at Jacobs, and a little background on the teams that I have the privilege of leading. We're very much focused on the design and delivery of infrastructure projects. There were a lot of nice positives there. I'll speak about a disruptor that we're seeing very acutely right now. Halts in federal funding budgets are really impactful, because so much of the work we do is for public agencies, whether it be federal, state, local. Other arms of our business are delivering for the Department of Defense, NASA, other places where uncertainty in funding creates a bit of a little hiccup, and the heart rate monitor goes off for a few folks. What allows us to remain agile in that environment is the ability to have a diversified workforce across the globe, and clients across the globe who will continue to have project needs where we can pivot a staff if some funding disappears for a bit. We generally don't believe that it is disappearing forever. It might be a blip in time, but one of the upsides of that is, as we're seeing some of the federal workforce being called at this time, there's tremendous talent coming out of places like the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, EPA, some of these other organizations. And it's going to sound a little vulturistic, but we're excited to be able to evaluate how those folks can enhance our teams. They're going through a difficult time, and hoping that they can land really nicely and safely in organizations like ours and provide solutions that they have expertise in.
Outstanding. Thank you so much for that. There's so many questions. I want to do the absolute best that I can to get all of these questions in, so work with me here. Maria, let's start with you. You've led workforce initiatives in both transit and aviation, two industries with strong public service missions and unique infrastructure needs. How do you approach workforce strategy in high-stakes, high-impact environments like these?
Absolutely. So I think for us, and for me personally, I love high stakes, high impact environments. It keeps me busy. But really, it provides an opportunity to make a meaningful impact. And both industries, and I group them in infrastructure, are 24/7, 365 operations, responsible for keeping people safe, but getting them to where they need to be. And for Den, we are so much more than just a transportation hub. In fact, we're an economic engine for the Rocky Mountain region. And so part of that strategy to make a meaningful impact in this type of environment is really aligning long-term vision with our current needs. And how we've done that and what I've been able to bring to Den is really empowering the next generation and bringing them along, keeping them engaged and excited and active participants in the change. And so how we define the next generation, we can very easily think of, the youth or next generation literally. But for us, yes, it is youth, it's emerging leaders, it's those individuals with a second or third career, and even individuals emerging into the workforce after being impacted by the justice system. And so being inclusive in that engagement is really important and part of the philosophy. Another piece is leadership, right? How do we have those conversations at various levels? Young, K through 12, right? We have programs that impact that age group. How do we start having those conversations early and often and identifying and naming what leadership is in their everyday skill sets as they show up either in the classroom, or in the program that they're in, but really naming leadership skill sets so that individuals can connect the dots in how their behaviors really represent some really critical business skill sets.
Outstanding. Thank you so much for that. Kirsten, here's your question. We've been hearing about the importance of skill-based hiring for many years, but its implementation is sometimes stalled between a CEO's good intentions and a talent manager's execution. That's not the case with Fidelity. Your team is a leader in skill-based hiring and internal mobility. Can you share a specific example of how Fidelity is helping employees grow in new roles, especially those that may not match their original experience on paper?
Thank you, and I'm so fortunate to have some of my amazing team here who's located in the region who do all of that incredible skills-based hiring. So we at Fidelity really look at hiring for potential. We certainly are obviously looking for things and specific skills for specific roles, but we believe in that opportunity for potential. We also are really looking at ways to continue to invest in skill set and training and talent development programs for our employees to help them with what we call career vitality, which is gaining new skills, experiences, and pursuing new roles. So not only are we seeking to really hire incredible talent, but we're working really hard to invest in our employees through learning and development programs that they can gain new skills, build upon existing skills, and apply those skills in a myriad of different ways. An example of that, I would say, is we have a 9 to 16 week technology program where we have associates who can gain both technical and professional skills that can help them starting out their career in a technology role at the company, and that's something that we've seen has been really, really successful.
Thank you for that. Amanda with Amazon. Amazon truly has some inspiring incentives for attracting and retaining talent, from offering college education for your employees, benefits on day one, to flexible schedules. What workforce retention strategy has surprised you most in terms of success, and what are you planning next?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for recognizing our efforts to retain and grow our talent. I'm going to say the #1 program that continues to surprise us is our career choice programming, which allows our associates to receive up to 95% or even at times 100% of their tuition completely paid for upskilling and development. That can be degree related, it can be certificate related, and is aligned to the most in-demand roles, not only at Amazon, but broader than that, the most in-demand roles from an economic and a community standpoint, with really the focus that if we are growing our associates, that they will be able to further support the communities in which we operate. Some of the key benefits that we've seen with the career choice programming includes, of course, increased retention, job mobility, both within current departments, but other facets of Amazon, which helps to ensure that we're keeping the instructional knowledge and continuing to grow that knowledge within the organization. We've also seen that help us champion our placement as a strong employer, employer who is committed to long-term growth and development. And then, of course, the versatility that comes with skill development, whether that individual decides to stay in their current role after completing their programming, or they continue to grow. They are a more well-rounded employee and professional and able to contribute to their peers and their team in new ways as well.
And I would be remiss not to name that Amazon has been the sponsor of our Presidential Scholarship Program at Community College of Aurora for the first 2 years. And part of that program, we sponsored 2 of your employees at Amazon. And so thank you all so much for that. And I just want to say to the room, if you want to sponsor this scholarship program, our foundation is present today. But let's talk to Jenny. It is my understanding that you value very greatly mentorship and see it as a key priority, especially as seasoned engineers retire. How are you tackling that challenge in a hybrid environment? And what creative approaches are helping with retention and knowledge transfer?
That's a great question, and it all comes back to right now something I think we're all dealing with, which is the hybrid environment. We got really, really, really comfortable in our homes, in our basements. One of our senior folks who has a talent with words and phrasing called it pajama engineering for a while, and he didn't mean it in a nice way. We have found different pockets and different places where we're struggling to create that natural environment for mentoring, and so we had to be more intentional about how that would happen. Here in the Denver area, I found it was our senior folks who really enjoyed being home. The younger folks were coming in, and they were looking for mentors. Mentors in developing technical expertise, mentoring in taking on growing. Thank you. We'll trade it out. Okay, thank you. Step-by-step leadership development, whether that be lead a task, lead a project, lead a team. We all deserve and need mentors in those areas to help us grow. So here in the Denver area, it was the senior folks who liked staying home. In Las Vegas, it was the younger folks who didn't want to come in. And it was just kind of an interesting little sociological experiment that was happening, where it was happening in different ways in different places. We did some strong encouragement of coming into work a certain number of days a week, or coming into the office a certain number of days a week. And we had moderate success, and then it started to kind of tail off a little bit. And so just this month, we are trying a 2-day-a-week ask. And the ask is, come in, see what is beneficial about it. Let us know what the pain points are. And then we're going to work at removing those pain points, so that we can encourage more development. If I need to talk to someone on this panel and I'm at home, I have to schedule a 30-minute Teams call, right? But if we're here, all of us, on a Tuesday, I can just walk down the hall and it's a 5-minute conversation. And so it's incredibly valuable to have more access to people face to face.
Thank you for sharing that, which is a great segue as we now are going to talk about this intersection between technology and talent. And to kick us off in this particular part of the discussion, Amanda, as you think about using artificial intelligence in the talent space, what innovations or opportunities do you see emerging? And what are some promising AI-powered tools or approaches you're using or see on the horizon for mapping future skills needs or creating personalized learning paths for employees?
Thank you. Well, we are very optimistic. I am very optimistic about the future of AI tools, as highlighted earlier, really with the opportunity to create additional efficiencies within our workforce development systems. So specifically, leveraging AI tools to help us better understand emerging and current needs by analyzing job descriptions, labor market statistics, and then working to develop skills matrix to support that through training and development. In addition, also using that information to understand where the current skill gaps are with our current workforce. So using our performance management systems, our survey systems, our attrition data and trends to analyze and provide clear outputs on actions and next steps that should be taking. As a workforce development professional, my role continues to be applying and developing the strategy, but with the important inputs that AI tools provide us, it takes more of the analysis away with, again, the key output so that I can focus on the strategy, the business adoption, change management, working closely with our education and our community partners, and once again, that work that really only a human can do by leveraging that technology base. Some of the current emerging things that we continue to be really excited about includes AI career coaching, real-time skill development, so a chatbot potentially watching an activity and then providing in-the-moment coaching, development, and feedback. As we think about the selection process, providing hiring manager coaching and feedback as we continue to align their selection techniques. Also, the implementation of virtual reality, both from a skill development but also a selection standpoint, really allowing our emerging talent to have a better understanding of the role that they are interviewing for through a simulated standpoint. So there's so many exciting things on the horizon as we think about further leveraging technology for our talent development systems.
Well, thank you for that. You know, we've got a little room here in the schedule. I'm just curious, do you all have any other AI-powered tools that would be for the good of the audience? I see a lot of people taking notes here. Are there any other AI tools at your respective organizations that you would like to share?
I could just share over the last year, we deployed actually a learning and talent development platform that helps associates look at a period of self-reflection. They can partner and share that both, self-reflectively for themselves, but hopefully have a conversation with their manager as well. It helps them do self-reflection around their aspirations, their career goals, and also look at skills that they have and skills that they want to gain. And what that does then is help invite a conversation around career development and ultimately mobility and provide some opportunities for experiential learning. But it also has an opportunity for the associates to highlight learning pathways. So it's linked to specific skill categories. It's linked to also having the capability of looking at our internal roles so they can explore what a future role would look like for them down the line.
And for us, it's not really a new technology, but something within the public sector that we've really adopted this last year is providing all of our employees with Microsoft Copilot. Sounds very simple, but really it's allowed us to test this technology and really kind of remove the stigma of AI and new technology and how we have really blended that with human-centered skills is not only providing all employees with bite-sized training opportunities to hone their skill set so they can become experts in that, but also on a weekly basis, we create the space for all employees to come together, if their schedule allows, but just to have a conversation. What are the pain points? What are the successes? What are they learning? So that you create that collaborative space for folks to utilize a tool and improve productivity. And so just kind of thinking about it from kind of an enterprise perspective, how do we bring in and incorporate a technology in a way that really includes the employee and provides them the space to talk to us about how that's impacting their work.
Thank you, Maria. Jeannie, did you want to share anything?
Sure. One area where we're developing the internal AI tools is around quality control. Thinking about design, development of infrastructure, you have a set of design drawings and specifications, and imagine on these sheets of drawings that you've got tags that correspond to a design specification in one area, or you might have a standard piece in on another drawing. And if those tags don't match, then it can be very difficult for this to be constructed in the field. It sounds like something that should be easy to catch. It happens all the time. Using AI to do some checking of those things is sort of that baby step into it, and then it goes into checking calculations and goes into checking other pieces. And I think at first there was some trepidation that this couldn't possibly be that beneficial. I mean, how could we replace the design thinking that that is our bread and butter of our business? But what this is doing is what I heard in that first session was taking the robot out of the human and allowing time and energy for more creative space. So lots of development. We're in some exciting early stages of putting those tools to work.
I love it. I love it. Just to have some crowd interaction here for a moment, how many of you all raise your hand if you were utilizing artificial intelligence in the workplace 3 years ago? 3 years ago, please raise your hand. How about now? How many of you all are utilizing? I love it. I love it. And the way how artificial intelligence is certainly getting ingrained in everything it is that we do. So many opportunities in terms of how we create efficiencies and new talent pipelines. Jenny, let's stick with you here. What emerging technologies do you see having the greatest impact on your workforce in the next 3 to 5 years, and how will they impact the workforce?
I think it's from a variety of perspectives in our industry. It is very much around data and AI. I think that's the obvious answer, right? Given the focus that we've had here already this afternoon. The capabilities are going to be endless, and so it's a matter of choosing where and how we get started in these first initial steps. In the industry that I'm working in, data centers require lots of space, construction and development, lots of energy, and it turns out lots and lots of water. And so we're using the technology, and then the emergence of that need in the industry is also going to fuel the kinds of work we do in the future. I opened with the discussion around federal funding, maybe providing a bit of a hiccup and something on the heart rate monitor there. The data center popping up as this new business industry in and of itself is going to drive diversification in what we're delivering as well.
Maria, how are you balancing automation and AI with the development? It happened again. There we go. Maria, how are you balancing automation and AI with the development of human-centered skills like communication, leadership, and collaboration? And are these durable skills getting enough attention?
Yeah, so I mentioned the co-pilot pilot that's really grown. But another thing that we do, and I'll share in a bit, is really centered around leadership. That really is the fundamental foundation element that we have and embed our discussions on. And so when we have either training or those weekly sessions with our employees, it's really focused on empowerment. How are you utilizing that technology, but how are you empowering, yes, yourself, but your team to evolve your own work? And another thing that we do to kind of blend both is really collaborating with other airports. We're big on after-action reviews when we try something different. We talked about megatrends mindsets. We are constantly testing new technologies, and we're not always going to get it right. So So success or lessons learned, we are proponents of developing those after action reviews, sharing it with the industry, because we believe collectively that we are going to approach the future together. And so those best practices and lessons learned, we're very keen on, yes, communicating within the organization, but broadly in the industry.
Same question for you, Kirsten. How are you balancing automation and AI with the development of human-centered skills like communication, leadership, and collaboration? And are these durable?
Thank you. So what I would say, I mentioned the digital platform and AI capabilities a moment ago, which is, again, an opportunity for our associates to look at both more technical skills as well as explore some of those more durable skills. It's critical for us to have and maintain the human element in financial services. We are dealing with customers, important investments, and that has deep meaning to them. So a lot of what we're doing from a durable skills perspective, I think a lot aligns so much with our leadership principles, things that are core and foundational to our culture at Fidelity. One of those I would highlight as an example is being customer obsessed. Customer obsession is just critical to who we are as a firm, and serving our clients is paramount. Well, in order to do that and do that really well, there's obviously a lot of skills that you need to be able to be registered and to be able to support our customers, but empathy, inclusion, active listening, really understanding what's on the minds of the customer, and relationship building with them is so key to maintaining, hopefully a lifelong relationship. So for us, it's definitely an and we focus quite a bit on those durable skills.
Here goes another question for my own curiosity. I know that in higher education, when artificial intelligence first really began to hit the scene, I think, in mass consumption, there was a fear factor that really began to kick in for a lot of individuals. And I think they had this image of iRobot and Will Smith back in the day, right? And this whole thing playing out as the computers are going to take over. I would only imagine that you all have dealt with different fear factors and fears associated with how artificial intelligence is integrated into the work that you all do. Just curious with this audience, what wisdom could you all share from the respective companies that you serve, your perspectives on this manners in which how you all successfully integrated artificial intelligence into the workplace that perhaps you can share with us on today?
This time I'm going to start so no one steals a good answer. I think there is trepidation. It is this idea that the work that I provide that is valuable, the skills that I have, would be replaced by AI, and then I am obsolete. I think that's a common fear. What we're finding is that the ways we can use AI are really in a tools-like fashion. We're using the tools to support what we're doing, to, the pace of play is so incredibly fast, and it gets faster every year regardless of what industry you're in. And to have additional tools at our disposal to be able to support that is valuable. And so advice, I think, is give it a try, understand and recognize trepidation, and be transparent about goals to try to get over that hump.
Yeah, and I would agree with all of those points. In addition, creating a framework for ethical AI usage. So making sure that there are expectations, just like you would have with any other policy change or tool, expectations on how an AI tool should be used, but also taking time to make sure that your workforce is educated on the behind the scenes of how an AI tool works at a high level, so they can understand if the output from that AI tool aligns or if it's potentially incorrect information. That is, again, where the human component still comes in with the AI tools at this particular point, is using that reasoning and that judgment to confirm that it is providing the output that you would have expected.
Great. Others?
I'm just going to add, I think a big piece of this is creating psychological safety and naming the fear and having those conversations with your teams about sometimes us not knowing, us as leaders, not having the answer, right? But navigating and charting the course together. And so for us, I think that's been really powerful to just name it. And as leaders, as senior leaders, actively working to create that psychological safety for our employees to have those conversations and to partner to navigate forward.
Kirsten?
The only other thing I would add to everything that's already been said is our employees are very curious. They see these tools, they're curious in how they can apply them. Obviously, we are in a regulated industry, and both to the points of how to use those tools in a responsible manner are critical. But our employees are already curious about it. So it's more important to invite that conversation and to take use case examples and to think those through and be thoughtful around how you can consider applying AI in those instances.
I love it. I love it. Thank you all for answering that question for me. Jeannie, what do you look for in an education workforce partner? We're now switching gears here and talking about partnerships and collaboration. So what do you look for in an education and workforce partner? In this workforce space, this could be a partner in K-12, traditional institution of higher education, or a workforce solutions provider. But can you share an example of a partnership that is delivering real results and one that didn't meet your expectations, and why? And if it didn't meet your expectations, don't say their name, just say them.
Well, there's a couple rules there. Educational partners are critical for the work that we do. I think that being a water treatment engineer isn't necessarily what you hear the kindergartners say they want to be when they grow up. It's probably lower on the list of some things folks aspire to because they don't know it's out there. And I think representation always matters. Representation of seeing someone like yourself in a role that is attainable. If you don't see someone like yourself in a role, you probably don't see that as something, you have trouble seeing yourself doing that. And so what we found is partnering with organizations, especially through STEAM programs across the communities where we live and work, is really, really valuable. I've been involved with the Society of Women Engineers through school, then through industry, career fairs. That's where we're really able to showcase the capabilities of what folks can do with the degrees that they're pursuing. We are generally employing engineers, scientists, and architects at Jacobs, and all of the support services that are required to keep fueling that work. We also have a really great partnership with the Colorado Association of Professional Black Engineers and Scientists, and we have our staff working as tutors after school, and we support their work there. We also help coach teams that are competing, maybe by building a bridge out of balsa wood. And these kids are having a lot of fun, and we're having a lot of fun as we're engaging with them. These, again, are ways where we're just exposing the next generation to the possibilities out there that they might not see otherwise.
It is gone. We're just going to share this microphone. What you're sharing is essential. The power of that, not only that mentorship element you were speaking of earlier, but individuals being able to see those that look like them in these roles and essentially see a future for themselves. I think that's very, very, very powerful. Maria, let me ask you the same question, because I know, I don't want to say it for you, but you all have some amazing work happening there at the Denver International Airport that I've most recently learned about. And so let me ask you this question. What do you look for in an education or workforce partner? In this workforce space, this could be a K-12 partner or higher education. Can you share an example of a partnership that is delivering real results and one that didn't meet expectations, and why?
Yeah, it's alignment. right? So that's what we look for in our workforce education and our partners in general. We are heavily invested in our people through workforce and economic development programs. And so, the alignment with mission and vision to create meaningful pathways, career pathways, but also willing to creatively work through any workforce barriers that might exist. And a partnership we're really proud of is one with the Department of Corrections and Bayard Enterprises to really uplift and support those that have been impacted by the justice system. And what makes this meaningful is that these individuals and participants go through a 14-week program, and they get the wraparound services. So it's one thing to provide an opportunity, but certain groups really do need those wraparound services. And what that looks like is transportation, meals, leadership skills, right? Those skill sets, and really kind of redefining what that new routine might look like. And so since its inception in 2023, we've impacted over 300 individuals, and they join us and are supervised within our maintenance department. And so the skill sets and what they help us with is snow removal, litter removal, power washing, and the beautiful thing is, yes, we provide them with wraparound services and those skill sets, but what Bayard has been able to do is really also support long-term placement with livable wages. And so the executive team actually makes it a point to go and connect with and meet with these program participants to get feedback from them. How is this going, right? And so the feedback that we've gotten has been resounding. And again, it's really providing the opportunity, the wraparound services, and then that long-term placement with the livable wage is really, really important. And the last piece, and what really makes our partnership special, is feedback and evaluation, right? Those touch points. Are we meeting the mark? Are we still aligned? If yes, great. If not, what's missing and how do we lock in? And so that's something that we actively do with our partners to ensure that there's alignment throughout, not just for us as organizations, but for the participants and ultimately the communities that we serve.
I know that there are a lot of educational institutions that are present today. I see some of my fellow presidents from the Colorado Community College System here. I know that President Davidson is here. I know that there are others. There's also these different training institutions towards workforce development. Let me ask you all this. What advice can you all give us? Something that you would like to see from your educational partners? Because as we talk about doing the skills-based training, being responsive to the needs of the workforce, I could only imagine there are best case scenario situations that you've seen from a curriculum development standpoint, that responsiveness for your organization, your company. However, there are always opportunities and things that we can do a better job of in terms of supporting your workforce needs. Just out of curiosity, are there some advice that you all can share to the educational partners that are in the room?
Yeah, sure. Yes, I'm so happy for this question. A couple suggestions or advice I would say is, as this team knows, the business moves so rapidly. So really taking a step back and looking at our learning systems and asking ourselves, is there an opportunity to put in modular or stackable learning instances, which would allow us to be able to produce workforce skills, individuals with those skills, in a rapid and constant evolving environment. Allowing also to have learning be a lifetime process. I think many of us are familiar, K through 12 system, then you go on to college, and then what really happens after that? However, as we take a step back and we consider the emerging technologies and that the environments that we continue to work in will change and adapt, we need to create systems that support lifetime learning and integrate learning into the day-to-day aspects of all of our world so that we're continuing to evolve and meet those emerging needs.
I'm going to add to what you just mentioned, and I think it's the lifelong learning element, but specifically, and I mentioned this earlier, in the K through 12 space, but this will exist throughout, a young person's journey, is the development of leadership skill sets, right? Naming, critical thinking, empathy. We heard empathy earlier. stakeholder engagement, communication. Every generation shows up differently, and the emerging generation is showing up differently, right? We've all experienced the new generation, and so really, how do we effectively integrate the generation that's coming up behind us to effectively partner with us, given that there are going to be differences. And I think one thing that we can really rally, and that's everyone in this room, beyond the educational partners or academic partners, is really focusing on leadership skills. So that we can develop our leaders for tomorrow and we can effectively work together as we navigate the future.
I think the critical thinking piece is so important. There's especially in engineering and science, there's such a focus on the fundamentals and absolutely critical. But in that, there is room for creative thinking. We all of us in this room want to hire the high achievers. High achievers are afraid of failure more often than not, and failure is part of learning. So in higher education, I think some room for a little bit of risk-taking and failure that allows us to get over that fear is something that would be really valuable. The critical thinking and the creative thinking are so important, because just because it's the way we've always done it doesn't mean it's the best way to do it. And looking for new solutions, new ways of tackling a problem is always going to be valuable.
The only thing I would add to everything that's been said is this is a definite evolution, and one that I think we need to continue to build on the word partner together. So as we continue to look at the job roles that we have and the skills that we value, both from a technical and a professional and leadership capability, it's really important that we partner with all of you to understand how the curriculum is changing, the more traditional, I'll call it, ways of which we have majors and minors and education tracks, and how do we help those things come together, more seamlessly, and that's something that I think we can partner on.
Kristen, let me ask you a follow-up question to that. As you talk about that partnership and you think about that dynamic of fidelity, perhaps, working with your educational partners, do you think that we need a new system in place for how we partner? Do you feel like we've got good bones on what we're working with now, we just need to make tweaks, or is there a need truly for a redesign in terms of how we do this work?
I tend to think of it, again, more of an evolutionary standpoint. I think we've got incredible partnerships. We have a lot of pride in our education system, a lot of pride in where we go to school, and we have a lot of good relationships, customers, employees. So for us, it's really, making sure that we're partnering with organizations and trying to meet everyone where they are. There's a lot of demands of our students, a lot of demands of our faculty, and so we're trying to make sure that we come together in ways that will really help further things on campus, further some of the other organizations that students are involved in. We've most recently deployed some student brand ambassadors, so they're local on some of our campuses that we recruit from to help us stay connected to faculty and be a little bit of an extension and arm from my, my recruiting team. So we're thinking about some of those things to continue to try.
Thank you so much. Maria, no pun intended, as we get ready to land the plane. We've got so many leaders in the room on today, university presidents, workforce system leaders, K-12 superintendents, business and industry. If you could give one piece of advice to Colorado's business and workforce leaders trying to look around the corner and stay future ready, what would that advice be?
I'm gonna go back to what I just mentioned in terms of leadership. Define it. Have those conversations and really uplift and have honest conversations about how we bring in and integrate that next generation. Specifically, our Gen Z, Gen Alpha, as they integrate into the workforce, how are we going to collaborate, given that we have different lenses in which we see the world? And starting those conversations early and often. And from a business side, having our conversations amongst each other and our peers of how are we going to be inclusive and welcome that next generation. So I think that leadership is going to be a big part of that, in how we show up for each other, and how we chart the course.
Thank you. Amanda, thoughts on that?
Yes, and so I would say, just by way of advice, is embrace collaborative and agile learning systems. Don't be afraid to form project teams that are just short-lived, that continue to either evolve or dissolve and move on. Invite your employers to be a seat at the table and align with them on expectations that there should be shared communication, shared resources, shared framework, and then leverage those employers to help design the curriculum for both their current and emerging needs. A couple of reasons why this is really important is, as we've already highlighted and as your hands shown, the technology continues to rapidly change. So there's not a need to have that long-term project planning. Instead, again, that rapid evolution of skill development. In addition, as we consider our global economies and the impacts that are potentially there that we cannot forecast, businesses will quickly need to adjust to meet the global pressures that they're being faced with. By way of example, with the tariffs that were just put in place, we are now predicting an additional 100,000 high-tech manufacturing roles needed in the United States, which was not anticipated 6 months ago. So again, just all of that additional pressure that's put on employers and our workforce systems, and the ability to rapidly meet employers in the workforce where they are, it would be the key focus with that collaborative and agile partnership.
Thank you for that, Amanda. Kirsten, let me ask you, again, looking around the corner, future ready, what advice do you have for this audience?
I would say continue to be a listener, stay curious, talk to your employees, and be a connector and partner in your community, both internal to your organizations, but across the table as you are today. We are all in the people business here, regardless of industry or sector. And that, as we talked about earlier, just cannot leave the conversation or the equation. So that's the advice that I would give.
I think that the most valuable lessons I've learned from teams are when there are a variety of voices at the table. I am an intuitive decision maker. I have an intuition about something, and I'm comfortable making that decision. I need data-driven decision makers around me to be my check. I think that when you have different ways of thinking at your leadership table, you're going to have the most robust problem solving and the best future. So continue to just bring diverse voices to your table in any job opening. It's good to have diverse voices.
All right, I think I've got time for one more question, and here's that question. Let's fast forward to 2030, okay? What do you hope will be different about the way that we hire, the way that we develop and retain talent, especially for the next generation of workers? I'll ask it again. In 2030, by 2030, what do you hope will be different about the way that we hire, develop, and retain talent, especially for the next generation of workers? Amanda?
Sure, I'll start. So my hope as I look 2030 and beyond is just further focus on a work-life integration and really purpose-driven career paths versus traditional job titles. So really taking the opportunity to explore, what problem does this individual want to solve? How will they help support our communities, our economy? How will they leverage those skills and working backwards instead of potentially starting with a very clear job title and then working into the degree requirements? So with that, again, that work-life harmony, that work-life integration, and career purpose-driven career paths.
I would just add that, I really hope that we maintain a strong level of human element in that recruiting, which I'm confident we will, because relationships are key, and connection to candidates is key. What I would say, though, is as we continue to deploy technologies and we continue to evolve, skills for the future, my hope is that we actually have even more information at our fingertips to be able to more creatively source candidates and roles, maybe in future roles that they don't even think possible. And what I really value about some of the newer generation entering the workforce is they are courageous and fearless and willing to try a myriad of different things, which will keep us on our toes and thinking about how to continue to evolve the jobs, the skills, the roles, and the learning ways of which we learn in the workforce.
I love the work-life balance. I think that's such an important piece here. And as we've talked about new generations, I won't name any generations, but new generations coming in, certainly there are different expectations than maybe there was when I entered the workforce. I think that what fuels great careers is great opportunity. And so I hope that we continue to create wonderful opportunities for the future generations so that they have the ability to pursue a meaningful career, something that gives them purpose, fills their professional soul in a positive way. And so, a combination of all of the things you've said and a flexible understanding. Gen Alpha, I've only heard that recently, and it's a real thing. Is it Gen Beta after that? I mean, at some point, they're just going to have priorities that we don't yet know what they are. And when we see them coming, I hope we are incredibly flexible in that area.
Yeah, and for me, in that tone, in that line of flexibility, I really hope that we can develop more collaborative processes. Earlier, we talked about more flattened structures within organization. Being open to what that looks like, right? And in the next 5 years, we know with the advancement of technology coming so quickly, I think that we're going to see a tremendous change in how we do business, how we collaborate, and how we learn even. And so my hope is that we are all at the table, willing to collaborate and do different.
I don't know about you all, but I certainly enjoyed my time with you all. Audience, can we give our panel a hand? Thank you all. Thank you. We're getting ready to transition here, and at this time, you're heading out this way. That's fine. Come on down this way. No worries. Thank you all so much. And at this time, to close us out, I want to introduce the president of MSU Denver, Janine Davidson. Come on up. President Davidson, thank you so much.
Hello. I'm not totally closing us out. We still have a couple more things to do, but if you do need to take a little break, the boys and girls room is back there, but we're going to go straight on through. So thanks for that great panel. It was super inspiring and practical look into how Colorado's employers are leading through change. And thanks to our panelists and to Dr. Brownlee for guiding that conversation. Let's hear it for the panelists. I really appreciated also the commentary about education, and especially Kristen, your last comment wherever she went, about how this next generation is courageous, fearless, and willing to try things. And so as someone who runs a university and I get to see these fantastic students all the time, I tell you, we better be ready, because they're coming and they're going to be ready too. So thank you for that insight. I really appreciated it. So now let's shift our lens toward emerging technologies. And we all know how AI is transforming the future of work, and the future of work is arriving fast. So up next, we have Catherine Keegan, Director of the Office of the Future of Work, and she'll be hosting a fireside chat with Eyal Darman, Managing Director of Public Service Data and AI for Accenture, to help us make sense of what's ahead and how AI is opening up new possibilities across sectors. So please join me in welcoming our panelists to the stage.
Hello, everyone. How are we doing? That That was convincing, thank you, yeah. My name is Catherine Keegan, and I'm really excited to be here with you all today and to be able to have this fireside chat. I was hoping there would be an actual fire, but I understand why there isn't.
A fire hazard.
Yeah, exactly. And so before we jump in, I just want to share a little bit about the Office of the Future of Work and why we're so excited to be here today, even though I think the name sort of tells the story. The office was created in September 2019 to raise awareness about what the future of work looks like in Colorado and to identify policies and programs that would create future-ready Coloradans. A lot has changed since 2019, and I'm really proud of the growth of the office and what we've been able to do. We house our state apprenticeship agency, Apprenticeship Colorado. We believe apprenticeships are key to the future of work and are important to integrate into our employment and education systems, and that's a big part of what we're doubling down on. We also know that the digital divide exists for so many. As we talk about AI and advanced technologies, there are so many people who still don't have the digital skills, the affordable internet access, or the devices they need to participate in the digital economy. So we're working to close that divide. Those are just two key initiatives that we lead, and we do this in partnership and work to create a future-ready Colorado with our really innovative education and workforce system. In Colorado, we're lucky to have such an innovative and impactful public workforce system that is meeting business where they need to be and meeting workers where they need workers to find their next step. We have innovative higher education that you've heard from a little bit today. We have so many great things to be proud of and so much more work to do. So as part of Office of the Future of Work, we do a lot of presentations around future of work trends, and we get to share research and insights about AI, globalization, market forces. So I'm really excited to be here to dive deeper into the topic that has been part of this conversation already a lot, AI and what it means for employers and workers. And so before we jump in, I wonder if you can give us a little bit more about your background and introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Eyal Darman. I lead Accenture's public sector and higher education data and AI practice. So we've got about 500 or so practitioners around the US that support public service organizations, nonprofits, higher education organizations in the implementation of the tools that we've been talking about throughout the day today. And so I'm privileged to have that opportunity to lead that team and to work with such a great group of clients in order to really change the way that we do work.
Awesome. All right, well, we have 22 minutes, and the time is counting down to cover everything as it relates to AI, so I hope you're ready. My first question is just from your vantage point at Accenture, how would you describe where we are right now in the evolution of AI, and what makes this moment different from past waves of technological change?
Let me answer that in reverse. So first, ChatGPT went to 100 million users in just 2 months. The equivalent of that, Instagram took 2.5 years, Facebook took 4.5 years, and the internet took 7 years to get to that size and scale. ChatGPT did it in 2 months. And the model that was put out in November of 2022 is no longer even used by anyone. It's already obsolete. So the speed at which this technology is evolving is actually part of the problem in this technology, because we're not able to adjust and adapt and kind of wire our brain to be able to leverage this technology as we have with other technology innovations. And so when I think about where we are, think of your iPhones. We're at an iPhone 3. You've got a couple apps from Apple. There's a camera, but no video. There's a flashlight, but you still bought a flashlight at Walmart last week. And you still own a regular digital camera that you somehow load pictures to your computer with. That's where we are in that evolution compared to whatever iPhone number 14, 16 that you have, where you're doing anything and everything, and then for some reason, some of you have 2 of them, right? So that we're at only the start of this evolution. And where I think we're going to go is, if you think of like the Accenture workforce, when I join Accenture, I get a laptop. Maybe the future is when I join Accenture, I get an AI agent as my assistant/buddy that I do work with. Fundamentally changing the way we do work. And so I think that's a little bit about kind of where we are, the speed at which we're going, and also a little bit about kind of how we're starting to see some of that evolution creep into the workforce.
Creep feels like the right word for
Yeah.
some of these. So we know that not all AI is the same. We've been talking a lot in this discussion, and I think top of mind is generative AI. But can you tell us more about the various types of AI and advanced technologies being used today, and what do you think those next steps are?
Yeah, I'm actually going to try something. I'm going to try something on my phone to illustrate this. But generative AI is what you're all familiar with. Everyone who raised their hand is likely using ChatGPT to do something on their phone, answer a question. Some of you are using it instead of doing a Google search. Others of you are using it to maybe accelerate your personal productivity. You need to write a letter, you're concerned about something, you want to get some more insights, maybe for research. Maybe you got a document, you want to summarize it, those kind of things. That's just the first step in this. Where generative AI is going, and was mentioned earlier, around agentic AI, where I have an agent that does things on my behalf alongside what I do. The way I think of an agentic AI in comparison to generative AI is I have 3 bots. The first one drafts the document that I'm trying to write. The second one independently reviews the first document and identifies recommendations. The third bot picks up the recommendations from bot number 2, the original draft from bot number 1, and then writes a brand new document as a final version. And maybe it does a series of cycles through those 3 bots. So when you think about agentic, that's part of what we're seeing next. Maybe the last thing that I would share, and I'm going to try this. So this is from a company called Sesame AI. We didn't practice this, so we're going to try something. And Sesame AI is the latest and greatest of voice AI capabilities. It has nothing to do with Accenture. It's just the latest and greatest in this technology. I'm going to open up Sesame AI's website, and we're going to pick a conversation. Now, what I want you to think about is not the answers, but just how normal, or in this case, they're both kind of sassy. So how sassy they are and how it feels like you're talking to a real person. So we're going to pick Maya, and we're going to ask her some questions.
Hey there. It's good to hear from you again. Was it just my... It feels like just yesterday must have been those Medicaid thoughts hanging in the air.
Well, let me start her over again.
Hey, wow, you're back again so Did we get cut off? I was just getting to the good part.
Hey Maya, how are you? It didn't work. What Maya and Miles are from this company called Sesame AI is the latest in voice conversation. And in some cases, I can go into ChatGPT and ask a question, but in other cases, if I'm driving or if I'm just by myself, I can just engage in conversation with them. And the interaction is not robotic. It's not like when you call the airlines and you, as quickly as possible, try to say agent, agent, agent to get to a real person. It's a conversation that you could have, and in many cases, I've had to use in order to really engage in a different way. So we're going to go from generative AI, which is everyone's used to, common with, to agentic. And then there's going to be some offsprings around voice AI and other things that are just going to fundamentally change what we do and how we do it.
I feel like the version of that I'm most aware of, is anyone a Duolingo user in here? And the video conversations with the goth teen that they have is where I've experienced some of that. That's very impressive. And so kind of building on that, we often hear that AI is reshaping industries, but what does that actually look like inside organizations? Something that I've paid attention to that's been part of the reports that we've put out is that previously a lot of the tech advancements were in tech verticals, but that is not the case as AI continues to evolve. So what are some of the biggest shifts you're seeing in how companies operate and make decisions as a result of technology?
Yeah, well, I think our current organizations today are structured around humans. And if you look at a business process that you have in your organization today, it was built with the human in mind doing the steps. Maybe over time you've automated a couple of those steps. Maybe you've introduced some automation, so one step that's repetitive, the human doesn't need to do, it just goes through an automation. But the workforce or the organization of the future is going to actually be very different than the organizations today. And I'll give you an example. We work with a company called Mondelez. Mondelez makes Oreo cookies. Easy way to think about what they do and how they do it. Global multinational corporation. They do their accounts payable. Maybe traditionally how you've thought of an accounts payable organization would do. They get invoices from all the various global organizations that support them, and they pay them out. They started automation of some way, shape, or form, and that automation got them to about 40% automation of their invoices. Pretty good, but still a lot of people, a lot of exceptions, a lot of barriers with language translation in those processes. We've worked with them to introduce an agentic AI model. They've deployed over 100 agents in their process to support their accounts payable organization. Each one of those 100 agents do one very small thing at a time. Kind of like what we said before. I draft, review, I create a new draft. So very small, granular activities that they do. And they went from 40% straight through processing of their invoices to over 95%. And that's created a different paradigm in their accounts payable organization. And if you apply that to the other parts of their business, you can start to see a shift in how the organization is structured, how the work is being done. And it's kind of similar to what we've seen in the auto industry. We used to have people take a door and put it on the car on the assembly line. And then it goes to the next step in the assembly line, and another person did, put the steering wheel on, et cetera. Today, in manufacturing plants, I've got a robot that picks up the door, puts it on the car, and I've got a human who manages 2 to 3 robots at 2 to 3 steps in that process. None of us think of it any differently. We all think of it, that makes sense in an auto manufacturing plant or in an assembly line. But this technology is now going to introduce this capability beyond a supply chain or an assembly line, but into the work that historically has had humans in each of those steps, which will fundamentally change the workforce. I think it will fundamentally also change how an org is organized and structured in the future.
That's a perfect lead into the next question, which is just about that transformation of the workforce as a result of this. So how are you seeing leaders prepare their teams for this evolution, or how would you recommend that they do if they haven't started?
I think this has been said consistently in the conversation so far. People need to use this, to touch it, to feel it, to engage with it, to start to do activities that are associated with this technology. Observing it from a distance is like observing and still staying with your flip phone when everyone else around you has a smartphone. My father-in-law still has a flip phone, and he's content. But everyone around him is using a smartphone and texting and sending pictures and everything around it. Think of that as the impetus to start to engaging with this capability. I think if you look in the future, each of us will either be using these tools or be replaced by other people that are using these tools. And that's a little bit of a tough love reality. And it's something that we should think about. How do we retrain the workforce? How do we change the way we do work? So as an example, at Accenture, we have almost weekly or multiple times a week brown bag session workshops to help retrain our staff on how to use this technology. We've spent and are expecting to spend $3 billion to retrain our workforce in AI. We're not building tools, we're not building products. AWS and other organizations do that. At Accenture, we're a services company. We help organizations in consulting, strategy, operations, technology implementations. But in order to fundamentally make a difference, we need our workforce to be using these tools. And that means retraining our workforce, which is where our $3 billion investment in this space has been very focused in on. And I'll give you an example of the output. I reviewed a proposal that one of our teams did, and we did a before and after. They proposed a series of work for a client. It was supposed to be a 12-week consulting project and had a price tag to it. And then we said, let's introduce AI in the way we actually will deliver this work. We reduced the price to our client by 22%, and we reduced the effort to complete that work by 1/3. So we can deliver things faster, and we can do it at a lower price point. And to me, that's the opportunity that we have with this technology. You'll see things get deployed, you'll see things get completed faster at a lower price point, which will open up new businesses, new technologies, new capabilities. I think someone talked about data centers earlier. Data centers are the next gold mine because of the need around this technology and the need for data centers in this space. And so when you think about maybe some technologies or some work will go away, it will be displaced with other things that will be needed in order to power the economy, to power these capabilities. Just like in prior technology innovations, right? There's no more saddle makers for horses because we replaced them with cars. Yes, there are some saddle makers, but the percentage of people that do that type of work has significantly gone down with the invention of a car.
I like that you were maybe afraid of offending saddle makers.
Yeah, I was like, hold on. There's a lot of people in the room.
Well, and what you're saying, I think, strikes me, because something that we think a lot about with the digital divide for even just foundational digital skills is it's different from other types of literacy, where you become literate when you learn how to read. But with digital technologies, you can learn one technology, and that could be irrelevant in a few months, as to your point about ChatGPT's evolution. Mm-hmm. So how does that translate to that reskilling and upskilling, whether that's in Accenture or with your partners, because it's really learning how to learn and try out new technologies versus becoming proficient in a specific technology. Is that right?
It's a different mindset. The mindset of I'm going to go to a 4-year degree and I'm going to go get a job, or I'm going to get a certificate and be able to apply that the skills I learned to get that certificate in my job is going to start to maybe shatter. And I think what you'll see is a concept that all of us, no exceptions, need to have some sort of continuous learning model of the latest and greatest of the things that we need in order to be successful. And I see that at Accenture as well. That, Accenture doesn't have a 4-year degree requirement anymore. All of our new hires into the workforce that are in the entry-level positions are either from apprenticeships or internships. We no longer recruit from 4-year universities. We focus on apprenticeships and internships as our entry-level resources. Because we're seeing that we want people that kind of have that itch of learning to be able to have a continuous learning model and be able to spend some portion of their week or of their month learning new skills so then they can apply them. Versus I go for a number of years, I come back, and I spend that time learning. That will start to get more fluid. You need a baseline for sure of learning, of skills, of learning how to learn, but then I think you'll see a lot more in the workplace on a regular basis.
Yeah, and I think that in Colorado and I think across the country, we've seen higher ed institutions that are, at the forefront of having that applied learning as part of their bachelor's degrees or associate's degrees, and seeing that really be part of how a higher education is changing. And I think, to your point, that's where we're going, and we've seen that innovation at the state level. I'm curious, just in general, how you're thinking about how companies should be thinking about reskilling or redesigning work to that end.
Well, I think you need to think about what are the needs of the work that you do, and the clients that you serve or the customers that you serve, and what are the things that will fundamentally could be disrupted with this technology. I think of a contact center. We support contact centers around the country for many organizations. Our contact center agents used to have high attrition. They're tough jobs, people calling in for government benefits. It's not an easy job. It's very taxing on a person. and we've introduced generative AI solutions into the toolbox of those contact center agents. So today, in some of our contact centers, a contact center agent, as if you're the caller and I'm the agent, as you ask questions, the AI is listening. And as the AI is listening to the conversation, it's recommending to me, the agent, how to best support the question you're asking. Different way of doing things, but it's not exposed to the customer, but it's really another tool in my toolbox as an agent. Now, at the end of a call, every contact center, public sector, private sector, the agent spends time summarizing the conversation. Think of a 20-minute call, 2 to 3 minutes are spent summarizing the call, taking notes so that the next time you call, we'll know what occurred in that prior call. Now, today, our contact center agents are offered a draft of a summary of that conversation that occurred. Because AI is listening to the caller and the agent, goes back and forth for 20 minutes, and then drafts a summary. That summary is more consistent, it's more accurate than any human summary would do. It's also taking the step that agents dislike the most, and we've surveyed them, because it requires a skill to remember a 20-minute conversation and jot notes, or do it during the conversation, and disrupt the conversation in some cases. And that fundamentally has changed the contact center space. So we're summarizing calls. We've reduced average handle time by somewhere between 10 and 20%, depending on the organization. That's a noticeable impact. You can serve more people. You can actually have longer conversations and more richer conversations and more human-to-human conversations, because I'm not stuck constantly trying to put you on hold so I can jot some notes down from what you asked. And so these things are fundamentally going to change the contact center space. It's going to change other industries, other jobs in similar ways. You're going to have more tools. Someone recently called it more super tools or more power tools in your toolbox that you could use. And today, remember, we're still in the iPhone 3. We see some cool things. We're still buying a camera. We're still buying a flashlight. The future will be that these things will be much more easily integrated into how we do things, and that contact center rep is able to have a higher satisfaction in their job, lower attrition, and a more engaging outcome from the conversations that they've had, because they've actually been able to spend the human-to-human conversation.
Okay, we have, I think, time for one more question. And we've been talking a lot about what business is doing, what business can do. I'm curious if someone leading an organization is feeling overwhelmed, or maybe they're a smaller organization, what would you say is one practical first step they could take to start integrating AI in a thoughtful, responsible, and people-oriented way?
Well, I think when you deploy this in the enterprise, you should be cautious about the free versions of all these products. They're not free. They're only free because the data you're using becomes part of the learning model of that large language model. So I would get the enterprise version of these tools. And I would also deploy it in your existing cloud solutions that you're using. So if you're using AWS, you should deploy it in your existing AWS environment. And there you could flip the switch on the generative AI capabilities that AWS offers in Claude or Anthropic's Claude or other models. Once you have that setup established, you now have the ability to really start to build out use cases to be able to be used at the enterprise. And my advice to organizations, large or small, is to think about the couple low-hanging fruit use cases that are low risk, that you could deploy, that have a high impact. And a good example is the conversation we just had about contact centers. Low risk, the agent can always rewrite the summary. The agent doesn't have to take the recommendations from the AI in order to answer the questions, but inevitably those two capabilities are going to offer them some real benefits. And so you could easily look at those capabilities and find ways to deploy a first use case. I think it was said pilot a co-pilot or do a pilot of sorts, measure it, see the outcomes, and then create a roadmap for additional things to implement.
I will say my partner this morning said, I think you should stop telling AI so much about your life. So I think the enterprise version.
I agree with your partner.
Well, thank you so much for the conversation, and thank you all for being such an engaged audience. I'm sure there's much more to talk about after in the reception. So, but thank you for the time.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much for that. Super interesting hearing about AI. And I'll just say, as a higher education leader, we were just talking about this week, all the ways in which we need to think about how to prepare our students to work in the workforce with you all. And I know there are at least a dozen higher education leaders in the room here from UNC, CU, CSU, MSU, community college. And that's one of the things I think that makes Colorado really special, is that our higher education leaders get it, and they are here to partner with the employers to make Colorado a really much better place, and to really prepare our future leaders to work with and for you all. So I just wanted to give them a shout out. So thank you, Eyal and Kathleen, for that insightful look on how AI could be disrupting or actually enhancing the workplace. As we think about the transformation, it's also important to remember what grounds us, which is purpose, impact, and community. Up next, we are thrilled to welcome a special guest who embodies all three. David Bruton is a Super Bowl champion, former Denver Bronco, and founder of Bruton's Books, a nonprofit rooted in his deep love for literacy and education. After 8 seasons in the NFL, David shifted his focus from the field to the future, becoming a doctor of physical therapy, running his own practice, and continuing to give back to Colorado's communities. So whether he's tackling a playbook or a pile of novels, David leads with heart. And today he's here to inspire us all. So please join me in welcoming David Bruton, Jr.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. First, I'm incredibly honored to be here at the Colorado Business Roundtable and to be standing inside Empower Field, a place where I hold a lot of memories, i.e. the Super Bowl 50 championship, right? It's definitely a little different being up here in dress shoes instead of cleats, and I won't tackle anybody unless you don't support literacy. But in all seriousness, thank you all for including me to be a part of this important conversation about the future of work and the vital role education plays in shaping it. Like was mentioned, I'm Dr. David Bruton Jr. Yes, it's weird to say doctor, and some of you may know me from my time in the NFL, where I had the privilege of playing safety and serving as a 3-year captain here for the Denver Broncos. But like many of us, my career didn't end with that final whistle. I went back to school, became a doctor of physical therapy, launched my own clinic, and I'm a founder of the nonprofit Bruton's Books. And right now we are in our 10th year serving the community in DPS. Thank you. And that's what brings me here today, because I've lived what the modern workforce now demands, and which was mentioned multiple times, adaptability. We're no longer defined by a single job title. Success today, and especially in the future, depends on our ability to reskill, to pivot, and to grow with intention. What surprised me the most in that transition from NFL locker rooms to physical therapy labs was how much reading played a role in my reinvention. I had to dive into dense textbooks, scientific journals, and case studies, material I've never imagined tackling when I focused on playbooks and game film. But reading became my bridge. It helped me take the discipline I developed as an athlete and apply it to an entirely new space. It gave me the language to advocate for my patients, the tools to launch my business, and the confidence to lead in rooms I never imagined myself in, i.e. this one. And that's why I care so deeply about making sure every young person has that same success. Because when you can read, you can learn, and when you can learn, you can lead. And let's be honest, if I can go from memorizing defensive schemes to passing neuroanatomy, anything's possible. But here's why Bruton's Books exists. I started Bruton's Books because I believe in the power of literacy and how it can change lives. Our mission is simple: to enrich lives through the transformative power of reading. We provide students, especially in under-resourced communities, with the carefully selected books and digital tools that spark imagination, build confidence, and open doors to opportunity. Because reading isn't just fundamental, it's foundational. Now, one of my favorite moments when I visit schools is asking the kids, what job do you think doesn't require you to read and understand anything? And I get some hilarious answers. Pro gamers, TikTokers, weathermen, because they never get anything right. But, you know, the one that always hits me hard is when a kid says football. I'm like, ouch. I take it personal, but I love that moment because it is a chance to flip the script and say, actually, even in football, especially in football, you have to read. You study the playbook, you analyze opponents, read formations, and make a split-second decisions based on what you understand. And that light bulb movement, that spark of realization is exactly why we do this work. And it's not just about books, and we've mentioned that multiple times throughout this presentation. We also focus on digital literacy, because students today need more than just knowledge. They need access. They need confidence navigating tech tools, digital platforms, and online learning environments. The future of work isn't just about being smart, it's about being digitally fluent, adaptable, and ready to learn for life. Now, why this matters to the future of work? The jobs of tomorrow, they'll demand creativity, flexibility, and constant reinvention. And it all starts with curiosity. Reading is one of the most powerful ways to unlock that curiosity. When we invest in our young readers, we're investing in a workforce that is capable, more resilient, and more ready for whatever comes next. And this work is not just about test scores and statistics, it's about equity. It's about making sure every child, no matter their zip code, has a real shot at success. Because the future of work isn't just something we wait for, it's something we build. And it starts in classrooms, libraries, and living rooms across our communities. Man, messing up my flow. So I invite you, whether you're a CEO, educator, parent, or just someone who remembers a book that changed their life, to join us. Volunteer, donate, share our story, be part of a movement that prepares kids not just to work, but to lead, to innovate, and to dream big. Now, before I wrap up, I've got something fun. We're giving away 2 spots at the Bruton's Books 4th annual golf outing on Monday, July 7th at the Club of Ravenna. It's a great day of golf, even better people, and supporting a powerful cause. To enter, just post about today's event on LinkedIn or X, use a quote or photo, something that stood out, and tag Future of Work Colorado, CO, or COBRT, and we'll pick one lucky winner. And remember, posting on LinkedIn is just an adult-approved show and tell. I hope to see you on the course, and thank you again for allowing me to share my story, my mission, and my heart with you today. Thank you.
All right, for those who know me, you know my midlife crisis is football. So if there's any excuse to combine sizzle for an event, I thought how fun to bring Dr. Bruton to join us today, and especially to hear more about what he does around literacy. Because we're all tired and we're getting ready to welcome the Secretary of Labor here in just a few minutes. Even though he's a tackler, I asked him if he'd throw a few footballs into the crowd. So if anybody wants to get ready, I don't know, we'll see how you do.
Can you hold this so it doesn't fly into the
Yeah, I'll hold the ring.
One.
Nice.
Oh, dropping dimes.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Oh, there we go.
We got somebody.
All right, let's see. Right here.
Oh,
that's a bad one. That's a bad one.
Okay,
I got hit. All right, we're going deep.
Oh, that's really good.
No.
Oh. Okay, last one.
All right, let's try it again. There we go. Oh, it was there.
Oh, nice, nice. Did you see he gave me his ring to hold? That's pretty cool. That's quite a thing.
Great paperweight.
I know. Oh, David's going to get a picture. I also want to let you all know I have golfed in David's golf tournament before. It was very fun. I actually got paired with a couple of your friends who are also football players. So if anybody's interested in also wanting to work with me on a couple foursomes, feel free. It'd be great to support his good work in literacy. And I know he's going to meet a lot of you for drinks after. So if you want to stick around and say hi to David, I think you're going to be here for a little bit.
Yes,
so I appreciate that. All right. Do I have to give it back?
Yes, absolutely.
I guess so. Okay. Thank you. Repeat what it
the
is.
hashtag?
Yeah.
Future of Work CO is the hashtag, and COBRT.
All right, perfect. I've already had people text me and want to meet David. The best way to meet him is to come to his golf tournament. So that'll be great. While we're waiting for the secretary to come, feel free, if you're in the back and you want to scoot up, there's some empty seats. If you want to have a better view for this last conversation, feel free to scoot up and fill in empty seats at this point, and we'll be wrapping this up. Before we introduce the Secretary of Labor and have that conversation, I also want to reiterate Dr. Janine Davidson's comments. If you were here last year, you know that last year it was very focused on our higher ed systems. We actually had a stage full of university presidents and a fabulous moderator of Hannah Scandero at the Daniels Fund. And many of those college presidents and their teams are in attendance today. And I just want to recognize them for doing such heavy lifting in our state to provide our young people with the skills that they need for most of the jobs. Really, we talk about skills-based hiring, but if you read the talent pipeline report from Lee's office, you'll know that there's a significant amount of jobs that still do require traditional four-year degrees, master's degrees, and doctorate degrees, like Dr. Bruton. If you want to go get seen by him, you know that he has the education to fit that. So I'd love for our higher ed presidents to stand. I know Amy Parsons is in the room with CSU, Dr. Ken Christensen with CU Denver, Janine Davidson, please stand, Dr. Andy Feinstein with UNC, Marie with University of Colorado, Denver. Oh, I got that wrong. Community College of Denver. And if I missed anybody, holler out. But let's thank our higher ed presidents today. Okay, and I just got word that she's not quite here yet, so we're gonna wing it and see how we can kill a few more minutes of time. Let's also thank, as I think about higher ed, the other group that we've talked about a little bit today are workforce providers that don't fit in necessarily that box. Folks like the workforce systems here, I know Tony Anderson is here who runs Denver, you're in the back, Tony. And all the people who are in that workforce mix, Activate, Cross Purpose, lots of different people who train apprenticeships, who work side by side with all the folks, the higher ed partners and the private sector folks. So if you're part of that workforce system here today, please stand and be recognized. Great. Thank you. And then I have this at the end, but I'm going to move it up since we're going to kind of be a little adaptable today. See, I'm practicing my own adaptability. Hopefully that'll serve me well. I really want to thank also, we've got a great group of board of directors for the Colorado Business Roundtable, and we are unique in that we really are represented by, again, that interesting mix of academia, business, community, and government, with so many of those higher ed presidents serving on our board. But if you serve on the Colorado Business Roundtable board, I'd love for you to stand and be recognized as well. I know we've got a table over here of a few folks. Thank you. Appreciate y'all being here. And Dave Shunk is our current president, chairman of the board, president of Volunteers of America, Colorado, here in town. All right, with that, are you excited to hear a little bit about the Secretary of Labor today? All right. I will give you a little bit about her bio so that when she comes in, we're ready to roll. She'll be coming in just a minute. I see Mayor Stephanie Pico of Centennial. Did you know that our Secretary of Labor, welcome Stephanie, our Secretary of Labor is a former mayor? I don't know if you knew that, Stephanie. Okay. She is sworn in just this past March as the 30th U.S. Secretary of Labor in the cabinet of President Donald Trump. Her path to the role is a remarkable story of public service, business leadership, and historic firsts. Secretary Lori Chavez DeReamer has dedicated over 2 decades of her life to public service. She began her career in local government, eventually becoming the first Latina mayor of Happy Valley, Oregon, where she led initiatives supporting small businesses and working families. She went on to serve in Congress as the first Republican woman and one of the first Latinas elected from Oregon, advocating for workforce, education, and infrastructure policy. She's the first in her family to graduate from college, And Secretary Chavez DeRemer also brings firsthand business experience, having co-founded a network of medical clinics with her husband. So we will wait for just another couple minutes for the Secretary. Oh, well, that's perfect timing. I just finished her intro. Please join me in welcoming the U.S. Secretary of Labor, Dr. Lori Chavez DeRemer. Test, test, all right.
Hello.
Oh.
Yeah, that was good timing. That's what happens when you have a whole team who walks you through and is like, now go. And then they have it all figured out. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to be here.
Well, we're excited to just have you be a part of our conversation here in Colorado. We just wrapped up 2.5 hours of amazing speakers talking about
Am I the last
workforce.
one?
You're the finale.
Wait,
I think
stay
it's even
awake.
better.
I know how these go.
It's great. Well, welcome to Colorado. Is this your first official trip to Colorado?
Yes, this is my first official trip as the secretary. My 6th state in my 50-state America at Work tour, so I'm excited to be here.
Perfect. Well, we're honored that you'd be here for our workforce event that we convene every year, and we were just honored that you were able to take us up on our invitation. And I suspect coming in today with the jobs report better than expected has got to feel pretty good.
Yeah, 2 months in a row. Certainly, as the Secretary of Labor, the focus being so narrow, different than Congress, and I know that you mentioned I was a former congressman from the state of Oregon, very different when you're siloed into a workforce and the labor movement. But what you realize very quickly is that you touch so many people throughout the continuum of their life, from really the first time that we have jobs, 16 years old, maybe 15, and then all the way up through retirement. The Department of Labor is very focused on all of those segments of the labor force. So that is exciting to me, but right now the president is very focused on growing the economy, making sure that we have a skilled workforce for the market demand that not only is he cultivating, but that is already here. So 177,000 new jobs this last month, 228,000 last month. You know, we knocked it out of the park the first month, and we have expected it to hold steady with unemployment holding steady, and then we did it again. So that's exciting for the U.S. economy as a whole.
That's fabulous. And I've got a few questions for you that'll be on some of those specifics, some of the executive orders that affect Colorado and are high priority for you. But before we jump into that, I gave a little bit of your bio in the introduction, a lot of firsts, which is really exciting, and a background that spans not only business, but public service, even local government, which I found really interesting. Tell us a little bit more about your professional and personal journey and how you ended up as a cabinet secretary.
Well, I can tell you this. I don't think I woke up thinking I was going to be the Secretary of Labor ever, really up until the point that the president nominated me. So to be quite honest, as I made my way through not only my personal journey, my husband and I are high school sweethearts. We met at 14 years old, Chavez DeRemer, homeroom. Class of 82 as we started freshman class. I thought he was really cute. I think I was 20 pounds heavier and 2 inches taller. But he had really big hands, and I knew, I was like, he's going to grow into those hands someday. I know it. And he did. Anyway, we went to separate colleges. I was the first to go to college in my family, Fresno State. My husband went to UC Santa Barbara. And while that doesn't really matter, we knew we had a journey because we knew that it was going to break the cycle of education and what we could attain. We married after college, and he wanted to be a physician, so I decided that I would be a stay-at-home mom after putting him through medical school, raise our twin daughters who are now 30 years old. I just became a grandmother about 6 weeks ago, so that's exciting. So even more renewed, thank you. Thank you. Even more renewed energy to do this work for the future of our country. Really, most of you who are here, you have your day jobs, but you are here because of your community and what you're going to build in the workforce, and that's for our kids and our grandkids into the future. So as my professional career, while raising a family, I was on city council and a mayor of Happy Valley, Oregon, right outside of the Portland metro area, where I served for 8 years. And really, my heart is in local politics. That's where I fell in love with understanding what it meant when state politics or federal level policies didn't really make it to the ground like it was intended. And I was always in Washington, D.C. or at the legislature in Oregon fighting for the local business owner. So that's kind of where I led. And so transportation infrastructure, education and workforce, that made its way then into Congress because I knew that those mattered to everyday hardworking Americans when they're trying to figure out what they're going to do when they grow up, what they want for their families, how they're going to afford to pay for their families to either go to school, pay for a mortgage, and now we found that harder and harder really over the last 15 years, and through this last administration and post-COVID was difficult, and we want to reinvigorate that. So coming from Oregon, I was served in Congress one term. While it didn't work out, and I say Oregon got it wrong, which I can now say, I do believe the president got it right because he wanted somebody who was going to be, who'd worked hard, bipartisan, could bring the tables together, labor and business owners. And I told him the day I met him for the first time, which was the day that he nominated me, was I could fill that table every single time. And I promised him that I would commit to working hard and capitalize on the work that I had done. So did I know I was going to be labor secretary? No. But had I looked backward and saw the tail end of what I had been doing really for 30 years of my professional life, it was always in labor, in the workforce, in the business industry. So I made that pitch in about 45 minutes, and he shook my hand and gave me the job.
Wow, well, congratulations. That's exciting.
Yeah, it was exciting.
We actually say hi to Secretary Chris Wright for us.
Oh, yes, I will, for sure. He's great.
He's been part of our work here with Colorado Business Roundtable for many years, and I suspect similarly, he was the CEO of a company, and I don't know that he pictured himself as becoming Secretary of Energy.
No, he really didn't have, as you all know, any political history before that. He sits next to me in the cabinet meetings. I don't know if you've seen it on TV. Not always, but some of the times. Some of us are sometimes gone, but we sit and nudge each other. But we'll work very closely together at the direction of the president. He is expecting all secretaries to work hand in hand throughout this administration for the next 4 years. So you'll see all of us deployed throughout the country for, I would imagine, most of the time. The president has been very clear and direct about working as hard as he does, and he does work very hard, and we're all doing the same. So, energy dominance matters for bringing down the costs and growing jobs. We know that the United States wants to be energy independent and be the leader on the world stage, and Chris is leading that, and he's been really great at what he does, as you all know.
We like to claim him in Colorado.
I understand. I would too. He's great.
One of the questions I want to start with is I had a lot of our folks actually send me an email when the executive order came out about apprenticeships, and the executive order was titled Preparing Americans for High-Paying Skilled Trade Jobs of the Future. And I'd love to ask you a little more about that. We've got quite a few companies that are part of our roundtable. RK Industries is here, Encore Electric, and others that definitely are big players in the apprenticeship world, and Pinnacle, who are working on a lot of professional internships that are more sort of, white collar, pathways. But tell us, how will the Department of Labor work with community colleges, traditional four-year universities, businesses to help scale? You've got big goals for numbers of apprenticeships, and maybe tell them about what that goal is. How can some of our workforce leaders be a part of that? Where do you see that going?
Absolutely. Well, the president thinks really, really big. So we set really, really big goals, 1 million apprentices throughout this country. We're just under about 700,000 annually all the time, but we have to grow that. What we want to do is fortify what is already in place. We have seen apprenticeships that work throughout the country that are sometimes self-sustaining through the trades, where they don't need any government funding, but they do need the support and the understanding that we have to educate our young Americans. Oftentimes, they've been looked at about 25, 26, 27. I was just, previous to this, come from another event, and we're wanting to see apprenticeships as young as 16, 17, 18, and 19. And I think that that's the collaboration between our community colleges, our trade schools, career and technical education is what is the market demand, what are people asking for very specifically, and we can almost be very precise in that determination that we couldn't really be before. So that disconnect has happened for a very long time. I used to see it as a mayor, understanding what the market demand was and then trying to listen to government officials tell you what you need. And they forgot to really listen to the answer and then offer that. So from the president's perspective, the administration's perspective, we need to lean in with the education department. Secretary McMahon and I will be working together. We are going to see a lot more of the workforce grants come to the Department of Labor as we move around the agencies and work together, and I think that's a missing piece as well. So once that comes under the Department of Labor, then I think that you'll see us lean in and be able to reach that goal of 1 million apprentices across the country. Now, that being said, what we've seen in the past, again, is the traditional trades. Oftentimes we see either through healthcare and or other industries that they're wanting to expand their apprenticeship programs as well. Just brought on, the International Firefighters Association and their first time having apprenticeships right out of high school. Those will add to that million that the president is asking for, because if we're going to grow this economy and be not only dominant across the world, we're going to have that workforce, and we don't want to displace the American worker. And in the meantime, as we prime the pump, so to speak, we will have to recognize that the American workforce that is not available today will still need across the world to come into the United States and make sure that we have that workforce until then. But this is a great time in America. It doesn't necessarily have to be siloed into what type of apprenticeships. What we know is that we have to lean in with the Education Department, with the Department of Labor, and understand what that means for you all. And we're going to need you as a resource. This is the difference. We're asking you what you need from us, and that's the difference in this administration.
Perfect. And I would probably say let us follow up on that. And we'd love to convene some folks who want to do a resource meeting with you in the future, and happy to pull that together.
I'm glad to do that. That's the best type of information. I don't pretend to know what you all know, but I certainly can convene a table, and I can listen, and I can execute very quickly with the president, and he's given us the latitude to do so as secretaries, is to work with him in order to get the job done.
Perfect. See, I'm already closing a deal for you all out there.
Transactional. That's good. It's good for America.
You mentioned pushing down apprenticeships perhaps even further into perhaps K through 12 systems. I'd love to hear a little more about that. I think I remember taking shop class as a high school student. I also had to take home ec. Neither of them stuck, by the way. But how are you thinking about these, especially because the executive order was talking about the trade jobs, skilled trade jobs? How are you thinking about that in terms of the K through 12 systems?
Yeah, there's a couple of different avenues, and I'll just touch back on through the Department of Education when we lean in for those grants and make sure that we're funding the younger age. The other portion of not only leaning in is going to be the AI sector of another executive order that the president has asked us to do. For a very long time, it's been somewhat uncertain of what that can mean for displacing. We don't want to displace anybody. We want to make sure that we're accentuating, we're being, it's a tool, a real tool that the president is wanting us to lean into. We need the younger generation. They are so skilled in AI. They're native-born, technically savvy. They're very smart, this young generation, and we're going to see that parallel, and it's going to streamline and modernize some of the businesses and industries that we have today. So a lot of these executive orders, whether they're apprenticeships, whether they're K through 12, we need that skilled workforce, and they're going to be in all sectors as we move through. We also don't want to forget or swing the pendulum too far back. We've kind of gotten off the 4-year university. We're going into the trades and 2 years and upscaling and understanding that we don't want the pendulum to swing too much. We do need our engineers. We understand that we need our higher education students in order to fill the entire pipeline as we move through. So again, Secretary McMahon and I will be working very closely on what that means for expanded Pell Grants, grant dollars as we can invest in our young people.
You've got a lot of university presidents in the room today, a lot of leaders with workforce centers, and then probably at least 50% of the room are private sector executives. So it's an interesting mix of people who care all about the future of work. So I'm sure they're glad to hear that everything's in the mix. It's not necessarily picking one system to do the heavy lifting.
No, we're going to need all systems and a level playing field for everyone there. And what we're finding is nobody's siloed anymore. People are working in your communities. Your universities play a very prominent role. Your community colleges play a prominent role. We want things to be able to be portable as well so that we can earn those certificates. And oftentimes a lot of the students are backing their way into their degrees almost as if it's individual degrees. And we're seeing that at a lot of 2-year and 4-year colleges where they're building their own degree along the way from what their career wants are and what the community needs. And a lot of our businesses are sponsoring or, pre-purchasing these roles because they know how important they are. I was just out at Intel in Oregon visiting, and we know we need engineers. We understand that for either the semiconductor or the chips manufacturing. Oftentimes that investment is a 10 to 15 year investment into an engineer to get through that process. That's not easy to do, and that's understood. But we're going to need, I just left also the carpenters union and the carpenters trade, and we need home builders as well for housing, to build the freeways, to build the bridges. We're talking about sheet metal workers all across the board, electricians. We're all in on all sectors of this economy.
Absolutely. One of the things that came up for our companies the last couple of years was really the concept of a PLA, or project labor agreement, that was a priority of the Biden administration. It's our understanding that some of that has been rescinded by President Trump. And the view, I think, that I keep continually hearing from businesses here in Colorado is we need all workers at the table. You could be a merit shop, we need you at the table. You could be a union shop, we need you at the table. How do you think the Trump administration is going to thread that needle in terms of playing favorites or letting everybody have kind of a level playing field?
Well, I think that goes back to speaking to why he chose me for this role. I am supported by a lot of labor unions, organized labor, but as well as the business sector. I own a business. I understand what it means to sign the front and the back of a paycheck. The president's been very clear, this administration, the one-size-fits-all no longer works in the American economy. We understand that we have to be flexible, we have to be nimble, we have to streamline. We understand that we also have to, think about cost savings for our companies as they play on the world stage. So there is no picking winners and losers. We are going to work with everybody who wants to work with us, and you'll see again that table come together. In regards to PLAs, again, one avenue where PLAs work. I mean, I've talked to private sectors where they don't mind signing a PLA when they know what it is and what it's for. There are unions who want to demand PLAs because that gives them a certainty into the investments of the future into those communities. That's understandable. So the president is going to work with me, work with our unions, work with our business owners to determine exactly what is the best case scenario, and sometimes that might be individually. What we know we don't always like is the mandates. It's across the board mandates that get us sometimes into where it's not workable, it's not flexible, it's not nimble enough for a community to be built, and some of these projects are large. On top of that, when a PLA sometimes can get into cost, be cost prohibitive oftentimes, what the president doesn't want as well is we want to have national security. We don't want things to get in the way of national security. He wants to be not only energy dominant, he wants to be the leader in AI, he wants to be the leader across the world, and we want to be that specifically if we're talking about China. So that being said, there are things that will let everybody have an equal playing field. He is not going to pick winners and losers, and neither am I, and we're in line together on that.
Yeah, that's great news for Colorado companies that I talked to on that issue, so we're glad to hear that. Speaking of sort of that one-size-fits-all, it's interesting that you're from the West. Of course, Western states tend to understand each other. We have a lot of common issues around everything from wildfire mitigation to water management, natural resources. So being from the West, it's interesting to think about how we might think about workforce in sort of a regional aspect. I'd be curious, again, thinking of the one-size-fits-all, is there a role for some of the leaders here in Colorado to really distinguish between what makes our region unique in terms of what we need in terms of labor policies coming out of your office?
Yeah. Well, certainly we're going to see labor policies that are not one size fits all. I mean, on the federal level, we do have to make sure what you recognize is that you understand what the policy is. Oftentimes it's like, well, wait, what are we doing? There's uncertainty there. Uncertainty costs money. Time is money if we're not, making it clear. We want people to be able to comply with the laws that are in place. That I know for sure, and we'll be as clear as we can be and as quick as we can be on that clarity. But from the West, when we talk about wildfires, we talk about a lot of data centers. The land is very different here than it is in the East. We've talked, about advanced manufacturing. We understand that here in Colorado, Oregon, a lot of those places in the West, oftentimes the vast land, getting products, goods, and services back and forth, a lot of that is so different than in the East. But either way, we're going to again, lean into what Coloradans need, what Oregonians need. We have to understand where the players are in the mix of the fabric of the United States, that we can all, those sectors can be afforded what they need to do the job. And so when we're looking at the workforce, that you understand that you have that pipeline and you have that flexibility. While that can be sometimes cliche, I'm putting together a team. My Deputy Secretary, Keith Sonderling, who was in Trump 1 administration under the Wage and Hour Division and then at EEOC, is now my Deputy Secretary. Very clear in the AI and an expert in AI, and he'll be speaking across the country as well so that you can have some clarity. My door is always open. I think that might be a little different than some of the other secretaries in the past. The accessibility is what people want. They want a team that's going to answer the call. And one of those areas has been the H programs, H2A, H2B, and the H1B programs. So understanding that, especially here, as you get to the middle part of the country, the southern part of the country, and the west, understanding those programs as well are very key.
Yeah, very key, and we're excited to collaborate with you on that as well. I would say, just back to the regional aspect, it'll be fun to work with your office to let you know more about Colorado's unique workforce. I'll give you just one tidbit, and maybe many of you in the room know this, that Colorado is the per capita leader in aerospace for job creation. I'm looking at United Launch Alliance back there and Lockheed Martin, which is something most people don't think about. You think about California or you think about Florida, but we have such a unique...
Defense contracting is big in the West, same in Oregon.
Yeah.
Kind of, it's unique. People don't even know it's a building way out somewhere. Nobody knows it. They're like, what is that? Oh, they build, F-18 parts. Oh, shoot, I didn't know that.
I know.
Most people don't, but that's great for defense. It's great, again, for this country, and we want to make sure that we have the workforce secure so that we don't have to be reliant on other countries, and understanding where we are in that mix. It's very important.
Absolutely. And I might reiterate back or jump back to a question about higher ed. I know there's been some executive orders on other issues, like we talked about skilled trades, apprenticeships. If you could give us some of your perspective about how the higher education institutions are going to be part of your priorities as labor secretary, that would be really helpful. I know that there was one executive order where President Trump even mentioned that the post-secondary system is economically unproductive. Would love to hear how we could think about what that might look like coming out of the administration, and how would you want the higher ed leaders in the room to sort of think through how they can partner with you?
Yeah, I think probably that conversation stems from, and I can't speak specifically to to what Secretary McMahon is going to talk about. I was on the Education and Workforce Committee. I think the ultimate goal out of higher education, and we see that through our extension programs in our communities, we see that through our engineering programs, any of our advanced technology programs, our professional programs, is the measured outcome equal to the input and the cost of higher ed? And I think that that's kind of what's been seen, that for far too long, the cost to go to higher education might not be produce the workforce, and if it does, is that what the market where they're going to school is going to be? Students will pick up, they'll move somewhere else, wherever the jobs are. We have to be talking to the community to make sure that you're producing in Colorado here. Are you producing the jobs that the higher ed is pumping out these students, and is it going to be good enough for them to be able to pay off that debt and then continue on their own road? Again, we do not want that pendulum to swing back so far the other direction that we're only talking about trades, or we're only talking about a skilled workforce. But what we do want to do is balance that a skilled workforce, a high paying skilled workforce job, can be an alternative if the other 4-year degree or higher ed wasn't in your lane. I think that's the speak that's there. But certainly working with Chairman Wahlberg on education and workforce, and also through the Help Committee on Chairman Cassidy in the Senate, I think that you're going to see a focus on both. And we want it accessible. We want our students to be able to afford to go to whatever choosing that they have, and then that we can produce here in America, the highest educated young Americans that we need in order to fill that pipeline as far as the Labor Department goes. So we'll continue to evolve. I'll continue to have these conversations with Secretary McMahon. As a matter of fact, I think we meet next week when I'm back in DC to really roll out what this program programming will look like.
Yeah, perfect. I think what we hear from our business leaders is it really is an all of the above approach. You know, even thinking about the aerospace industry, for example, they certainly need the highest level of educated workforce, and they need, you know, folks who know how to build things. So it's a yes and we think about the dignity of work and helping individuals have agency and choices, but it'll be fun to think about those issues. But I think that's what you're saying. Is all
We
of
have
the
to keep
above.
the open
Yeah.
communication. We have to continue to collaborate, and we don't need to be siloed. You know, we've invested a lot in the future of this country, and we just have to do a couple of quarter turns. Just keep making sure that we lean in. And for far too long, government has been absent in that. And that's, I think, the recognition that this administration wants, is that all of us are now paying attention to what's on the ground. And you know what's better for you. I don't know what's better for Colorado. I don't live in Colorado. I know what's good for Oregon. I know what's good for, you know, well, I don't know about Washington, D.C. But that being said, that's where we are. And my job is to take these stories back to the president. That's what these cabinet meetings, they're very public, as most of you know. Every 2 weeks, he calls us in, and the media is in there because he wants everybody to see what we're talking about. It's been a very clear direction, while we have the latitude to run our agencies as we see fit. We know that we want to reinforce the programming that's working. We want to save the Americans their hardworking taxpayer dollars. We want more Americans to keep more of their hard-earned dollars, and the president is very focused on that.
Perfect. And that's part of your listening tour. That's why you're making your rounds to the different states, and you know, which is really great. How, you know, you've got to be management by walking around, essentially.
It's being a mayor and as a secretary.
Sounds good. Quick question on tariffs. I think it's been on the mind of a lot of our executives, whether they're running a university or whether they're running a business. How are you seeing the current tariff policy? How are you seeing that impact job numbers presently? How do you forecast that being something to consider in the future?
Well, the tariff conversation's been, again, very apparent for most people who are paying attention, and I think most are. They're working. We've seen the job numbers go up. While it seems uncertain or maybe something that's not been done before, what is certain is that you have an administration and a new team in the White House who have said that whatever we have to do, we're going to make the adjustments to support the American businesses. We've seen the onshoring, the reinvestments, almost $8 trillion that the president has on paper. Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, we all work very closely on those trade policies. We do not want unfair trade practices. I don't think that's been fair for Americans, and we're going to fix that, and that's exactly what the president is doing. So we're working hard to make sure that there's adjustments, but we've seen the job numbers stay up. We've seen unemployment hold steady. I'm expecting the next job numbers will be the same. We've seen the private sector job growth has gone up over 90%. Yes. Has public sector job growth at the federal level gone down? Sure it has. But where we have seen an increase in public sector is at the local level. We're seeing right in our home states, in our hometowns, is the public workers there, that has risen. It's just been at the federal level that has reduced because we want more investment in the private sector jobs. So will these tariffs make a difference? Absolutely they will, and we're on board and we're moving full steam ahead on those, and we'll support the president in that way. And then my job will be, when those manufacturing jobs come online, when there are other companies who are reinvesting or spending more money. When I go to the White House and I see somebody say, I'm investing $500 billion back in America, that matters. And then you get another company up and say the same thing. They know that they want to work with Americans. They know that they want to work with this president, and they're going to need a workforce to do so. And so I have a big job to do.
You do have a big job to do.
You have a big job to do.
We do have a big job to do. Just following up, because you brought up the H-1B, I'd love to hear more about your feeling on that. I was able to go to an event, it's been a couple of years, but with former Speaker Paul Ryan, who talked about two issues. He says 2 things will help America's long-term future. Of course, he always likes to talk about debt and deficit, which I admire. And the second thing was about modernizing our immigration system and really having some clarity around legal pathways. I'd just be curious if that's on your
Yep, absolutely. It's right under my Department of Labor. Department of Labor, my job, as far as it comes from the H programs, H2A, H2B, H1B. Specifically, you're talking about H1B because of the higher ed and that part of the workforce, is to test the market, understand exactly where we're missing, and get accurate data into the field, and then work with the Department of Homeland Security, Secretary Noem, on understanding what that number is and what that cap needs to be, and are we going to fully use the cap, and then work with Congress if they're going to, codify that or not, or change it within the law. But that being, and then the Department of State issues them. So there you go. There's the chaos. 3 different agencies have to understand this program. What we're doing at the Department of Labor is very specifically, because of the conversations I had with the senators and with a lot of the representatives, is just the accessibility, the mitigation of some of the issues, the barriers that companies will go through, that, all of the different programs that they have to understand that if without those programs, they won't have the workforce that they need. And you can often say, like I said, I was just at Intel, and I'm sure these advanced manufacturing or high-tech companies know that without that pipeline of an investor investing into an engineer of a 10 to 15 year to understand what you need specifically, we'll miss the mark, and somebody else is going to fill that gap, and it's going to be another country, and it's not going to be the United States of America. That's the concern, and I would imagine the conversation around your boardroom tables, we want to make sure that we're supplementing that gap until we can have more American workers. And as you work with your universities, and I will be calling on the university presidents here, so I don't know where you are, not today, but I will be, because I want to understand, as you bring your students into your schools, where those students are coming from. A lot of those are foreign students as well. We want them to be able to stay. We want them to be able to invest in America. They have the knowledge here. We're investing a lot in them, and then oftentimes they have to go back. So there's just a missing link there. Department of Labor is creating, my team is working on it now, a sub-agency specifically just to handle the H programs, because they get lost in employment and training administration, and that's 80% of the Department of Labor's budget is ETA, and there's just this there's not a sub-agency to handle it, and we're needing more and more of that focus there. It's what the Congress asked me to do as well. So we're just, even a week or 2 or 3 oftentimes matters to these companies. So we're very focused on it, very aware of it, and I have another meeting scheduled, as we all do, with the other secretaries to figure out who's going to take the lead on those.
Perfect. Well, we're almost out of time, but I have one final question for you to help us wrap up. And we've been, again, so grateful to you to come to Colorado to be a part of our event. We look forward to working with you in any capacity that can be helpful. But tell us, what are you most looking forward to in your role as Labor Secretary?
Well, I think what I'm most surprised about, now I've only been in the office for just over 50 days. Well, first of all, I love this job. And I love it because I'm honored to do it, 1. 2, what I recognize when I'm out and about in just the 6 states that I've been in is that there's so much of the work that's already being done. So much of the work that's being done by companies, by universities, by the trades, that it's just not going to, this job doesn't feel like it's that hard, which I know that sounds kind of, I don't know what it sounds like, but it sounds like, oh, come on, how come it hasn't been done then if it's not hard? But I just feel like we've just kind of not had enough communication to understand that we are just this close to getting it right. And I think if we just keep focused, work hard, keep my head down, work hard, and understand what you all care about, then that's what I care about. I don't have to be from Colorado to care about what you care about. I just have to understand why you care, and it's because of your future families or your communities. That's why I care about Oregon. I grew up in California. I care about California. So there's a lot of little places that we all come from that look a lot alike around this country. And America is at a transformational time in history. So I think I'm going to learn a lot. I will tell you on a personal note, while I didn't get a professional degree, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a lawyer. Thank God I'm not a lawyer. So for all you lawyers out here, there's so many lawyers in government that I'm glad I'm not one, because there's plenty of them to give me advice. I am excited that at the end of 4 years that I will be a professional in the Department of Labor and understanding what the workforce means to this country. And I'm only going to get that by coming here and understanding this. So for me, this is easy to come here and visit and just do this. And I think that's just been missing for far too long. And we'll build a great team. We'll always be accessible. I'll always answer the call. And I have a feeling there won't always be nice meetings. But you still have to show up, because I don't know any other way to do it. You still show up, even if you have to answer hard questions. So as long as you keep doing that, I'll keep doing that. And I promise you, we'll get the work done for the American people and the American worker. And the first 100 days was exciting. The next 100 days is going to go even faster.
It will. Please give a warm thank you to Secretary Chavez DeReamer. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks everybody.
All right, that was fun. I suspect there were people texting me more things to ask her, and I didn't get all the questions in, but rest assured, I think I just guaranteed that we get another meeting with her. So I heard her say, I think we have that on video, so that's good news. Just to wrap us up for today, I want to thank a few more folks, some of our sponsors, Colorado Workforce Development Council, the Office of the Future of Work, Associated Builders and Contractors, Fidelity Investments, Encore Electric, and the Rocky Mountain Workforce Development Association. Thank you for helping to buy our drinks that we're going to have in just a couple minutes. And I already gave a thank you to our board. I definitely want to give a shout out. I don't even know that she's easy to see, but Erin Amsbury on my team, she truly does the heavy lifting to pull all this together. I don't know if she's nearby. But if she missed it because she's working, she'll see it on the video. But I don't know what we would do without her. One of the things I really took as the takeaway, and I don't remember which executive said it, but somebody said, we are all in the people business. We're all in the people business. It's sort of like somebody saying they're not in sales. No, we're all in sales too. But when we think about these issues around what's coming next, the future of work, we all, at the end of the day, care about people and want to work together to make sure that people have the most agency, the most choices, the most pathways that they can going forward. So this is really the fun part, is I would encourage you to stick around. We've got about an hour or so for reception. We have drinks, we have food. If the cookies weren't enough for you, now you can have some appetizers and some wine. But I hope that you're able to talk with some of the folks that have booths around the corner, get to know Dr. David Bruton, get to know some of the university presidents, try to gather some cards so that we can think about what's next and how we can work together going forward. So that concludes our convening today, and we look forward to chatting with you over at the reception area. Thanks so much for coming.